the past. The Silver Case.
The Silver Case is a strange game. Me saying that isn't some groundbreaking new revelation, it's arguably just a fact. It's a visual novel, but one that decided to try and defy its own medium. Not through a sense of vindictiveness, but through a genuine want for telling the story that it has, having to break and mold the structure of the genre in its own weird image. It's a game that takes the very words on screen the box that they were in, and steals away any comfort and expectation of how they are handled. It's a detective story that has upsetting and horrifying moments with genuine depravity and darkness, but it's also often full of quirky characters, side stories, and turtle therapy. And honestly, it's pretty great. The Silver Case was the first project by Grasshopper Manufacture, which I would say is most well known for No More Heroes nowadays, as well as its quirky founder Goichi Suda, better known by his moniker Suda51. Suda51 is one of those auteur game directors you hear about, who have very distinct, quirky visions for their games that can be instantly recognized by those who know them and their trademarks. Suda founded Grasshopper Manufacture after he left Human Entertainment. At that point, he had worked on and headed a few games for them. Most relevant for the topic of this video, he headed a game called Moonlight Syndrome. Moonlight Syndrome was a sequel to the Twilight Syndrome duology, games which followed a group of high school girls who investigate supernatural occurrences together, peppering brief gameplay in between the main focus of the game, which was the dialogue and relationships between the girls. The duology, while it touched on some dark adult subjects in horror, was still ultimately a fairly pleasant series about the friendships between these girls and their adventures. And while Suda is listed as the director of the first two games, he came into development rather late, and thus didn't have much creative input. This, though, would change with Moonlight Syndrome. As a warning, I will be spoiling Moonlight Syndrome, as it ties directly into the Silver Case. The whole Syndrome set of games are only available in Japanese, which is a shame because I would honestly love to play them. Especially the first two, since they seem sincerely fun and have a very strong aesthetic. But unless you speak Japanese or the series is suddenly revived or it's a fan translation, you and I most likely won't be able to play them anytime soon. Suda focused more on psychological horror in this sequel, dropping the borderline slice-of-life adventures of the first two. Now, there were very dark adult plot lines involving things like several characters who were, shall we say, involved in George R. R. Martin-themed romantic relationships. Throw on top of this violent murders, a prevailing theme of psychosis and abuse, and an eldritch trickster god, and the mood of the game was very different, having a Lynchian vague surrealism to everything, as opposed to the more understandable stories, the original games. Even the aesthetics shifted, from a relatively normal Japanese town to a slightly futuristic and surreal city. Moonlight Syndrome also quite notably killed off every single one of the original protagonists, the only main surviving character in Moonlight Syndrome being left crazed and holding a severed head of one of the other characters. This was a very obvious tonal shift towards a pessimistic, dirty world. Since then, Moonlight has been written out of the official Twilight Syndrome canon. After this project, Suda left Human and founded Grasshopper, as he believed Human was going to collapse. And he was right. Grasshopper continues, though, still making games to this day, as well as re-releasing and remastering their backlog. Most recently, at the time of this video, they re-released their games Shadows of the Damned and Lollipop Chainsaw just last year. Similarly, they have also brought over several of their Japan-only games to the West, with new translations and remasters. Silver Case is one of these games. Silver Case was first released in Japan in 1999, but only here in the West in 2016. The Silver Case, being Grasshopper's first game, I think is pretty damn impressive. It's vast and subversive in very interesting ways. Many visual novels flow with a fairly straightforward format that isn't broken within it. That being text within text boxes moving either automatically or when the player clicks. These confines, especially at the time, weren't really broken. It just did, what the name implies, show a novel with some visual stimulation. And just in the way that most novels play the format straightforward, with an author really breaking the format of the page, keeping paragraphs, quotation marks for dialogue, and so on, some rare books will decide to not follow this format. Quite famously, the book House of Leaves breaks those confines, playing around with what can be done with a nonlinear narrative, having the words on the page arranged in many unique ways, jumbled together, cut out, almost like the words themselves were physical objects that were literally grabbed and moved in different ways, thrown into a pile, written sideways, etc. The Silver Case does this, but within the visual novel space. Takes the comfort of the genre and presents it to you, but once you are lulled into that comfortability, it yanks it away. Surrealist horror scenes take away the comforting safety of these dialogue boxes in their placement, forcing words to appear faster than they had before, sometimes appearing nonsensically, all the words together, others flashing past, the game itself clicking through before you had the chance to, taking your control away. It sounds small, but it subverts a sense of normalcy that is important to the game's vision. If our characters see a shocking scene that feels borderline or even outright supernatural and world-shattering, just reading about it isn't going to fully put us in that mind state. But when your own lens to see this world is taken from you and cracked, it unnerves you and immerses you, even if it is in a way that only a fourth wall break can do. A part of the intensity of this as well is that the game is just downright stylistically inspired. It would be one thing to just do this through text. The art, music, and gameplay also add to the experience. The game plays around with changing its art style chapter to chapter, and point of view to point of view. Importantly, the art used for characters and scenes change completely, depending on who we are playing as. Even the aspect ratio and position of things during gameplay shift, which makes playing the Silver Case feel more engaging than a traditional visual novel. The color palettes and backgrounds also change chapter to chapter, having unique aesthetics that usually tie into the chapter itself. Anxious words randomly appearing in the background to build up that sense of tension, or everything becoming black and white for a more serious chapter, or a chapter that's focused on the internet and hackers having that sharp green aesthetic of old terminals. It makes the highly repetitive format of a visual novel feel ever-changing, and as such, engaging. Look forward to seeing how the next chapter's aesthetics will change. The game has first-person segments that function mechanically almost like an old-school dungeon crawler, with tile-based movement. I will be outright honest and say that while I like the idea of these sections and what they represent, to further shake up the gameplay so you aren't just always reading, they're very undercooked. Sometimes you just walk one step, more dialogue pops up, and you walk one more, and more dialogue pops up. It feels automated, even if you are technically pressing the buttons and manually moving. And oftentimes it will present you a large area that you are forced to go tile by tile through that has nothing in it. The 3D environments are neat visually, though. In general, I like a lot of what is present. Namely, the buildings look fantastic. The super cool, dark, and brutalist futurism to them. Conversely, some places like a park feel vibrant and beautiful. The vibes in many locations are just spot on and immerse you in the setting. I think they work well for that. Rather than just having a drawn background, you can be in a 3D environment and feel the depth and detail. The issue I have, though, is that many times while exploring these 3D spaces, they are absolutely barren, especially with samey interiors. Big buildings, though visually interesting on the exterior, offer no visual distinctions floor to floor, despite being massive. I have this issue with other HD remasters of games too, like the Bard's Tale trilogy and Wasteland. The art style seems to shift for something a bit more plasticky. I actually like those remasters, just like I like this game's remaster, and I do imagine it is hard to bring an aesthetic that largely relied upon low-resolution screens. Overall, though, I enjoy the 3D graphics. And some places don't have these issues. I just wonder what a more expanded remake version of these places would look like. A really neat thing about the graphical presentation as well is the mixing of different mediums of cinematics and story moments. The game seamlessly cuts between 3D cutscenes, anime segments, visual novel segments, and even live action, which means that the style is shifted constantly. I absolutely adore this about the game. It presents an eclectic feel that matches the rest of the game's variations perfectly. It is also intelligent, in my opinion, to get the scenes you need, however you think would work stylistically, rather than saying everything has to be anime or everything has to be an engine. The music of the game is also upsettingly good. Like, I'm not exaggerating with that usage of the word, it annoys me how awesome it is. I've listened to some tracks on their own outside of the game, and even when writing the script. There are some absolutely beautiful tracks, as well as their intense, rusty, industrial, jagged-sounding ones. It feels more like a film soundtrack than a game. I know this isn't unheard of in video games, but it is nonetheless impressive, and it adds to the immersion and quality feeling of the game. Unique tracks also play in the menus when selecting a new mission, and I would sometimes just not click play on the chapter to hear the song in its entirety. But eventually, of course, I did click play and began the story. The Silver Case's main story is, well, for obvious reasons, the main focus of the game, and as such, it will also be the main focus of this video. So I will be spoiling it, though mostly in a linear fashion. I will be skipping a few things as well, so if you decide partway through you'd rather stop the video and play it on your own, I understand. But otherwise, let's get to it. The Silver Case is set in a different version of our own universe, primarily in 1999. For the most part, its own history is similar to ours, with some exceptions. Quite notably, the setting of the game, the 24 wards of Kanto, is more recognizable in real life to Westerners as the greater Tokyo area, though in real life there are only 23 wards. The game takes place mostly within this fictional 24th ward, and it is a very corrupt place with massive wealth inequality, both financially but also in easy access to information, which keep the poor poor. There are also several political factions fighting amongst themselves, and there are 3 of these main factions. The 2 currently in power are the Techno faction and the Civic faction, but there is a third one, the Conservatives, who are vying for power. Don't worry too much about remembering these factions or their specifics. Though some plotlines pretend they're important to the story, they really aren't beyond you knowing that bickering factions exist. The game begins with us naming the character we will be playing for half of the story. The canonical name for this person is Akira, so that's what I went for this playthrough. But before we get to Akira, we follow a detective from the Heinous Crimes Unit of the police force, a man named Tetsugoro Kasabi. Kasabi is the third most important character in this story, and probably my favorite. He's a vulgar, seasoned detective who has made making this video and reading some dialogue very challenging due to his colorful and sometimes dated dialogue. Kasabi is kind of famous within the police force for being the detective directly involved in the titular Silver Case. All we know about the Silver Case right now is that it occurred 20 years ago. It involved a string of serial murders, and that murderer, Kamui Uhara, was publicly arrested by Kasabi. We follow Kasabi as he drives around alone at night, heading home in the dead of winter. Immediately this game's style comes in on the silver platter. I don't think that's how that term is used, but just look at this. The car gliding in, the city shining in the background, and the stylistic cut almost make it look like a manga. Our first introduction to Kasabi, he's complaining about the music, and says, "On nights like this, weird shit happens. That's just the way it is." And prophetically, a lone man appears in the middle of the road. Kasabi comes to a grinding halt. The man, holding a severed head in one hand, a gun in the other, pops a shot right at the car, nearly killing Kasabi, and the man runs away. This is the only surviving playable character from the end of Moonlight Syndrome, Ryo. This prologue chapter, Lunatics, functions as an epilogue to close out the stories of the few people left from Moonlight. And also the chapter name is Lunatics. Luna, like the moon, like Moonlight Syndrome. Anyways, this is one of the only times art of a character appears in the 3D space. The rest of the game will instead treat empty spaces as if they have characters in them, by showing their portraits in the top left. It works here though, and I wish that they had put character sprites in locations more, even if they were just 2D over a 3D environment. Kasabi radios into his unit and tells them he, supposedly, dodged the slug and watched it whiz right by, and asks for backup. The nearest unit is a covert ops section of the police force called a Republic, led by a guy named Natsume, who Kasabi seems to know. The police units within this setting all function as antagonistic competing factions, getting funding from different sources, but Kasabi needs help and tells them to call Republic in. TGIF my ass. You get this cool ass animation of his pistol being loaded and cocked. And it's things like this, frankly useless and unneeded animations that just add that unique stylistic flair that this game has, and there are tons of them. We get another brief animation of the moon rising, and suddenly get presented with a lot of exposition. This isn't even close to the only time this will happen. We have a lot of convoluted lore presented at us in one big go, multiple times, but this one breaks down different police factions and which the political parties is funding them. This is neat, but honestly I think the player could have just been trusted to pick up on this dynamic, without having to learn the exact hardcore specifics. The way characters interact with each other between the police forces make this plot detail clear enough, and we don't need to know that the Department of Communications and Finances formed X faction. That is useless and no one will remember that exact detail. But regardless, our player character Akira is introduced. We are a member of that newly formed Republic. We are secret forces and essentially tasked with handling dangerous cases that they don't want the public to know about. And yes, that is as sketchy as it sounds. We're even told not to talk to Kusabi to keep things secretive even between the police. There are other members of our Republic here with us, including the leader of the unit, Natsume, who once headed the Silver Case investigation. This is ironically enough Republic's first ever mission, and it will involve 2 different Silver Case detectives, now in opposing factions. As Natsume and Kusabi's fates intertwine, the dark clouds of the Silver Case loom. And we are about to learn how tied this event to the Silver Case really is. There are 2 other squad members with Akira and Natsume, Sakamoto and Inomata. There is some dialogue exchange between us, and some further flavoring to the world setting about different levels of disposal and armaments allowed to the police, with levels marked by different letters. These levels are never explicitly explained, which I think is for the best. It keeps it ominous thinking what these levels of disposal could be. It also adds an air of sci-fi-ness to it, discussing clinical levels of force allowed for disposal. Also, it being called disposal and not killing is a very disturbing detail. Referring to ending someone's life as something so distant as to disposal evokes the idea of taking out the trash. Tracking Ryo, we approach a satellite tower that he has fled into, and it is so cool looking. The moon looks gigantic next to it, and it's shining bright. It looks straight from a 90s anime. We rush into the building and cut to Natsume and Kusabi having a small conversation. They seem to genuinely like each other, and reminisce a bit on old times, and Kusabi asks how Natsume's daughter Sakura is doing. We get our first-person segment. It's jarring to get used to, as you have this little wheel marked by letters. Each letter has to be selected to do a different type of action. It is very similar to old RPGs, when you'd have to decide which mode like combat, dialogue, or stealing was active. This is similar. You have to even activate movement to be able to move. You have to activate contact to both interact with objects and talk to people. There's the save menu, which you can only open through the wheel. And lastly, the implement option, which is greatly underused. Explore around the room and find a handful of puzzles. Funnily enough, this is the most puzzle-intense chapter. Later chapters, for the most part, abandon them, which I don't really have an issue with, as these puzzles function as little more than time wasters, having to do the same puzzle and repeat several times in a row, which just boils down to seeing a code, putting the code into a decoder, and getting a new code, putting that code into the panel to unlock a door. Did I say code enough times? This puzzle never reappears, which is probably for the best. But the inclusion of it on basically every door we go through here in the opening does get a little tiresome. Luckily, in this version of the game, they put a little icon you can click. It just automatically solves the puzzle for you. But regardless, we aren't here for puzzles. We're here for the story. We explore the complex with Sakamoto beside us, and after a few unlocked doors, we find a woman covered in blood. In her dialogue, we get individual letters, all caps, with many dots spacing them out, spelling, "Help Mika." Sakamoto checks on her and tells her she is okay, and the art of her zoomed up unnerves me. The expression is haunting. We continue to the 3rd floor, and every floor, by the way, both this building and future ones, have more than unneeded but stylistically cool animation, showing a 3D side view blueprint of the building and us moving through it. On the 3rd floor, we find Inomata. He's just been shot by the target Ryo in the arm. Inomata goes to leave, but tells Akira that the suspect doesn't seem to be afraid to die at all, or maybe he's even enjoying the risk of death, laughing about the fact that he's going to be killed. It genuinely seems to bother Inomata. He tells Akira to dispose of him, but then also seems to get disturbed by how emotionless Akira is, and we see this throughout most of the game. Akira is often described as terrifying, distant. He's often mute. We find another woman's body in a room. Sakamoto leaves us behind to reset some programming to a door blocking our path. We unlock the door and rush ahead. I actually tried to wait and even go downstairs to get Sakamoto to come with us. The game wouldn't allow me. You have to go through without him. The rest of the game is like this. Attempting to stray from the path that is planned is not possible. The game is entirely linear. When we reach the upper floor, we have another cinematic of the moon getting covered by shadow. We explore the upper part of the tower, giving us a swirling look of the city in the distance. It's very atmospheric. We climb a ladder to the top and find a woman. Art splashes on the screen. She's covered in blood, and she's holding a woman's head and crying. The dialogue just forces itself forward. "Help me, help me, help me," she says on repeat, filling the whole box. We're ordered to leave her alone for now and to try and find Ryo. Heading back down, we see the moon is in full light once again, and Ryo catches us. The dialogue thrown in is a jumbled mess, no spaces between the words. "I'll kill you, I didn't do anything, I will kill you, that woman killed them, I'll kill you, want to protect Mika, I'll kill you, forgive me." We're ready to fire on him, but for whatever reason we don't. The man continues ranting. Rebel, rebel, please don't kill me. Rebel, 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 I really don't want to do this. Rebel, 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 someone help me. Real game, real game, real game, don't want to die, I don't want to die. All these dialogues go so fast and instantly cut to the next, the art shifting with it. It makes you feel anxious, just like a person in the situation would be, experiencing the nightmare of a moment incomprehensibly fast. We aren't allowed to take it in, ponder it, or act. This uses the mechanics and confines of a visual novel, of words to get across an idea, and atmosphere only it can. Only a game of this format could, like the full-on morphing together of words and hiding of other ones in between as it forces itself forward. Spoken dialogue couldn't emulate that. It only works because you have an expectation. Dialogue, space sentences. But when that confine is broken, it makes you think, what else is this game going to do that normal visual novels don't? It breaks the wall, but not in a direct way. It just makes you ask a question. We hear a gunshot. Kusabi got the drop on the suspect and shot him in the head. Before we can even comment, Sakamoto is getting on Kusabi's ass, saying this is our jurisdiction and he can't act without our permission. In that, importantly, we had disposal rights, not him. Like, that is what matters right now, bureaucratic bullshit. Kusabi then says, now it's our job for cleanup. He says someone looks like a chinchilla. When Sakamoto asks if he meant Akira, he says, the f*** should I know? The one that looks like a chinchilla. Why the hell didn't you fire? He continues on to say that people like this are messed up in the head, so we shouldn't even leave a bit of skull. He then fires several more shots into the guy's head. He asks Sakamoto, who he nicknames Straight Edge, why we dispose of these guys. He says because they're criminals. Kusabi gets annoyed though, and gives him a lesson. You do some really unique shit. Listen up. Disposal means cutting these motherfuckers out of the world. Get rid of their very existence, so nobody ever has to even see them again. This crime virus they're spreading around. Cut it off at the source. Annihilation of the self. That's what we do. The use of the term crime virus is very concerning to me. The idea of crime being a thing that can spread to people like a disease is things people in power say to justify dehumanizing people. Not to say the serial killer isn't a piece of shit. He should be forgotten. But this concept of the crime virus is upsetting when it's stretched and taken literally. When Kusabi turns to leave, we see this terrifying visage, a spectral version of the man who was just killed, looking like a Cenobite's ghost. And suddenly the music starts playing over an established silence that has been going since he was shot. It's made my heartbeat go faster when I first played this scene. It is so out of left field and terrifying, bringing us out of a somewhat grounded but spooky setting with a supernatural slap in the face. He repeats, "You killed them!" Kusabi stops. He sees it too. He tells us this is what crime brings, and that this is a demon brought on by it. The spirit, though, just repeats, "I'm not dead, I'm not dead, I'm not dead." Kusabi just ignores this and asks us, "Can you shoot him, Chinchilla? Can you take them on? Fire! Destroy this very moment." We hear a gunshot. Then we see it was one of the surviving girls who shot the gun. The music shifting, again, to a tense, tragic song. She asks why. Why don't you just leave us alone? Seeing that the girl is unstable and involved with Ryo, we're told to dispose of her. We get this disturbing close-up of her face. She looks so innocent, normal. Her eyes look pitiful. We see the red dot of our gun slowly moving its way up her face. She pleads, "Please, help me." The red dot centers between her eyes, shaking subtly. She continues to beg, saying she doesn't want to die, and that she just couldn't take that woman anymore. She suddenly breaks, cursing us, saying she'll kill us. After we click through this, we get a long text box. "Killing me will change nothing. Everything starts here. The devil will come upon us once again with the sound of the bells. We cannot die. We will have our revenge. The new will be reborn, together with Kamui, the holy hunter. When Kamui returns, he will be the god of chaos." We pull the trigger. We see Kusabi walking away, reflecting on this. This Kamui she is calling out for was the killer involved in the silver case 20 years ago. Kamui Uhara. So, the sleeping lion has been awakened. This is going to be a long journey. We fade out. The chapter named Lunatics appearing next to the moon, with a teaser at the bottom almost like a TV show, teasing its next episode. Decoy Man is coming soon. Then, over the moon we see the words Vanishing Point, referring to the song by New Order with the same name. And this is our intro to the silver case. A very effective opening. We get the world described, our main character as well as Kusabi established, and a mystery in why these people would be calling out for Kamui, and what comes next. Not to mention the supernatural effect of Akira and Kusabi seeing the spectral ghost of the killer. And my god, that scene with a woman where we have to shoot her is just haunting. It disturbed me. Seeing her eyes up so close, the red dot moving up her face, and the idea of actually being that close to a person having to kill them is just... ugh. And the shift from her pleading to psychotically rambling. Gosh, it's just so good. It's a strong, if albeit confusing opening. Especially since it is essentially an epilogue to a game no one in the West is capable of playing, unless they know Japanese. But, regardless, we're now moving into solely Silver Case story territory. Let's go. Chapter 1 Decoy Man opens inside Harakiri Batting Center. Kusabi is having a secret meeting with a man named Munakata, who is a detective with Central Police, and is tied to the Techno faction. He seems to be friends with Kusabi, and they have a brief conversation about the Silver Case killer, Kamui. And Munakata thinks Kamui is going to make a move soon, even though he's been in a psych ward and unresponsive for years. Kusabi seems surprised and asks how he knows, and Munakata jokingly tries to extort some money, and Kusabi threatens to shoot him dead for it, but they continue on. This is a reoccurring joke from Kusabi. He threatens people all the damn time. Munakata says the way he knows is that his toothaches that tell him. His proof is that he had his wisdom teeth removed when the Silver Case had happened. And? So what? Trying to tell me your toothaches are supposed to be some sort of antenna for shit about to go down or something? Exactly. Don't underestimate what my teeth can do. Kusabi completely changes tune. Alright, I believe you. I don't get it, but I believe you. I love this quirky line of reasoning and shift in Kusabi. It's charming, and it reminds me of Dale Cooper's weird premonitions in Twin Peaks. And like Twin Peaks, the people in the Silver Case don't really talk or act like real humans, but their writing is so compelling and filled with love, detail, and quirks that they feel in-depth and real, despite being unrealistic. I know I just contradicted myself, but it makes sense to me. I also choose to believe that the setting expand universe includes Twin Peaks, Ichi the Killer, and Dracula Flow. Kusabi asks what he should do. We suddenly get a live-action cutscene of a woman running. Ominous droning ambience playing. We then cut hard to art of a woman smiling on one half of the screen, the other half showing Kamui in the shadows frowning. We are told that Kamui killed his personal counselor and escaped. The weapon he used very similar to a customized harpoon gun. Estimated time of wait, a harpoon gun? The hell you mean? We are told a satellite tracked Kamui's movements into the woods, and the Republic, Akira's Special Forces unit, was sent to pursue him. But only 10 minutes later, Republic fails. 2 are dead, and 2 are injured, and Kamui escapes. He and his crimes unit partners, Kusabi and Sumio, head to the hospital where this breakout began. Kusabi mutters to himself that Munakata called it. I love this little art of the two of them sitting together. Kusabi looking like a little kid in trouble who knows more than he is sharing. And we get to see Sumio for the first time. He's the young partner of Kusabi. Kusabi seems to trust him greatly, despite the age difference. They go over to Akira. We see a shot of Akira's face. He looks terrifying. Hollow eyes, blank expression. Kusabi asks who he is, and calls him creepy. Sumio tells him that Akira is the sole survivor, and his real name isn't known, but his code name is Akira. Sounds pretty sketchy to me. What a fucked up story. Sumio reminds him that we met previously months ago, and he remembers Akira. Oh, you mean that chinchilla? We're also told that Natsumi is in the ICU, but Kusabi insists that he won't die. We go back in time now and get to play through the events in the forest that wiped out the team. I'm mixed on how this is done. I think it would have been a little more impactful if we went into the mission not knowing that they all would die. But then again, the feeling of anxiety going into the mission knowing what the future holds also has its benefits. We learn that our goal is to bring Kamui in alive, not to dispose of him. These are orders from up top. Just follow them. Don't think. Keep your shit together. Nothing like telling law enforcement not to think about what they're doing. We get an animation of a satellite in space helping us pinpoint Kamui. Thanks to it, for this section, we have a mini-map that shows blips pointing out people. Inamata freaks out, worrying he's going to die, since in the last mission, he was only the one to get hurt. Sakamoto tells him that this is because he underestimated the power of crime. That even a normal citizen can have great criminal power, but we, working in the forces, are essentially criminals too, just sanctioned ones, and that we need to have more criminal intent than the target to win. Disposal is the same as crime, just hunt the target. This seems to empower Inamata, who says if he thinks about it just as hunting, then he can't be beat. We split up, and the mission begins. The forest is very cool visually. The opposite of the cramped building from earlier. It feels sprawling, and like you could easily get lost, since you can barely see ahead of you. We eventually pinpoint Kamui on the map, and we all follow orders to try and corner him. But we quickly find that display distance between the target and us on the map is false. Before we can even react, we hear a gunshot, and Sakamoto's radio goes silent. Inomoto gets unstable and starts shouting angrily at both the chief and Kamui, saying that he'll hunt down Kamui himself. We find the body of Sakamoto, bloody hole through his eye, and Inomoto continues ignoring orders. We rush into the forest trying to get to him, but eventually Inomoto speaks to us over the radio, asking Akira to be sure to collect his body. We hear a gunshot and soon find his body too. When we do, the chief tells us the mission has failed, we need to retreat, and that he is staying behind to try and get vengeance on Kamui. He asks us to laugh at him. He also asks if we know the phrase, flower, sun, and rain, and he says the answer is inside Kamui, to not let him get to us. Kamui isn't here. Kamui is right next door. Kamui is just peeking in. You get me, Akira? Nope, frankly I don't. It's time we said goodbye. Take care. We then see the art of him illuminate, and a person standing behind him. We cut back to the hospital. The two detectives are interrogating us, asking if we remember what happened. Sumio says that we appear to be in a state of psychosis. I don't think he can speak. What do we do? Kusabi asks Sumio to get out the recorder, but Sumio says the batteries are dead, so Kusabi just tells him to write it down. He shows us an old photo of Kamui, looking like a Harkonnen mixed with Riddick, and asks if we recognize him. The interview is interrupted again by Kusabi telling Sumio to stop messing with the recorder like a little kid, and then Sumio tells him, "F off, old man." We get another Kusabi threat, calling him an asshole and saying he'll blow his head off. Fine, whatever, ask the questions. Little moments like this make these characters feel so genuine. The story could have just easily had the recorder work. That groundedness of little things going wrong adds so much. A woman at the heinous crimes unit named Hachisuka radios in and tells Sumio that there has been another homicide, and gives him the location. They bring Akira with them, but Kusabi stops before we can fully leave, and says that Chinchilla is a shitty nickname, and that Akira needs a better one. He ponders for a moment. This guy, he's got a face like a private detective. In that case, maybe like Private Dick Chinchilla? No, that's not it. He's sort of a big guy. Big Private Dick Chinchilla? Nope, that sucks. I got it. Just shorten it to Big Dick. Big Dick, Big Dick. That's it then, Big Dick. What do you think, Sumio? That's awesome. Let's go, Big Dick. Listen, if this scene alone hasn't sold you the writing in this game, I don't know what to tell you. We go to the scene of the homicide, a sewer line with the body of a woman strung up to the sewer grates. A large group of police are gathered outside, including members of the heinous crimes unit. But I'll wait just a little bit longer to introduce them. For the moment, though, two nameless police officers talk about Kamui, how they thought he was just a myth. There's lots of things that little guys like you and I simply never know. Crime is just like the darkness. It isn't meant to be seen. The body is brought down and Kusabi says the murder couldn't have happened here. He begins telling people around what to do, and also recruits Akira to look around. We walk forward upstream into the sewer entrance. Further in, see a spectral body a lot like the killer's from the lunatic's case. But now instead of a man's body, it's a woman's. She repeats, "Help me, help me, help me." We move deeper and see a doll. It speaks to Akira. In the bright and dark plaza, everyone played together in harmony and killed each other. With a wonderful smile, the gentlemen laugh happily and say, "Do you want to be happy, baby? Do you want to be happy, baby? Do you want to be happy, baby?" The gaudy man said it 3 times in a row. Everyone looks so happy and answers, "I'm gonna be happy, mama. Everyone wants to be happy. I can't wait for the fun weekend." Kusabi emerges and asks us what's up. He doesn't seem to hear this, but both him and Sumio see the doll and seem freaked out by it. We hear a creepy laugh, and then the scene fades out. We leave the sewers and head to the 24th Ward Precinct headquarters. We meet the heinous crimes unit properly now, and get little cute character details and fun facts. There's the chief director Kotobuki, a big man while he's wearing sunglasses. His details read, "Heinous crimes unit boss, deeply insightful and very conscientious and sympathetic." Consequently, his popularity is amazing. Kotobuki doesn't directly go out into the field, but he provides crucial support from the sidelines. Then we meet Naka, a young, sharply dressed man. An eccentric man who usually works investigations alone. Eccentric, you say? And his trademarks are slicked back hair and finely pressed shirts. Kusabi, our main man, more afraid of being hated by his daughter than anything else in the world, Kusabi is seriously considering quitting smoking. Currently his biggest source of worry is his eldest daughter Toriko's overseas studies. Sumio, the young partner of Kusabi, the backbone of 24-Ward's HC unit. Not one to conform nor conflict with the police force. He knows his place and puts all his focus on crime. Hachisuka, the woman who's been mostly on the radio so far. Morikawa's partner, a beautiful female detective, originally worked in a crime lab. Her father is 24-Ward's mayor, Kaoru Hachisuka. Extremely serious and hard-working. She is quite proud and tends to stick out within the department. Not very well liked by Kusabi. Lastly, Morikawa, the hippie-looking guy with purple glasses. Joined the HC unit together with Kusabi from the time he was established, one of the oldest members having learned the basics from Kotobuki. Cleverly using the truth to his advantage, his investigative skill is veteran level. Naka fills us in, as he normally does from this point on, recapping the event so far and saying we have to try and find Kamui. He lays down some specifics though, insisting that the name of this case is the Kamui case, because it's a good, simple name. Then we learn some more information. The victim was physically involved with Kamui, and that this was known around the hospital, but that it was one-sided, since Kamui was mentally impotent. And wowee, the tone of this case has completely changed. That's pretty damn messed up. We cut to a shot of Kamui in complete darkness, a blank expression on his face, and then cut back to the police precinct. Hachisuka and Kusabi are arguing rather intensely about investigation methods. Kusabi thinks Hachisuka is doing her job wrong, and that forensics is useless for this job in particular, and that she is sitting there doing the easy work while he and Sumio have to do the hard things in person. Morikawa gives Kusabi a pink letter stamped with a heart. It says he got it from Munakata, the guy at the batting center from earlier. The note is the location of Kamui's hideout. It's a love letter from someone. Kamui seems to have a big fan base. We cut to Akira in his apartment, and on his computer he has a threatening email labeled "To Chinchilla." It says that this person knows who Akira is, what he's doing, and the kind of man he is, and even what he thinks in his day-to-day life. They warn him not to stick his nose into various matters, and that there is an amazing number of things for which the phrase "ignorance is bliss" holds utterly true. It is signed, "The Bat is Always Watching." Akira walks over to a TV and stares at his terrifying face in the reflection. He gets a phone call from Kusabi, telling Akira to go to a place called Babylon Shopping Center right away. Akira arrives before Kusabi and Sumio, and I'll be honest, I am confused why they would call Akira in for help. He's unstable, not part of the heinous crimes unit, and still mute, but for the sake of us having a story, I'll ignore it. We enter the shopping mall, and here we encounter the truly worst, or, well, almost the worst of the first-person segments. Every single step, 8 times in a row, we are stopped for more dialogue from the radio, and I kid you not, sometimes the dialogue is literally just, "Hey, just checking in, Big Dick. Got nothing for ya. Speak in a moment." Takes one more step. "Hey, Big Dick. Me again." It would be comedic if it was on purpose, and it might be. The shopping center is closed, so we have to find a way to deactivate the security shutter to get upstairs. We're told that Kamui is targeting a woman here that he was in art school with. We get to the control panel and are given my favorite puzzle of the game. It's simple. It's almost like a 4-number game of Hangman. We have 20 tries to get it right. It's simple, but more fun than translating a code back and forth. We unlock it and are able to get upstairs. When we get there, Kusabi says our new priority is to find a civilian on that floor to get him to safety. After exploring for a bit, we find one of the shop's shutters is halfway opened. Inside is a dazed man repeating Kamui's name. Despite his delicate state, he still comes with us. If we try to talk to him, he says nothing. I actually encountered a glitch here, where when I got back to the top of the escalator, I couldn't move, so I had to force close the game. Luckily, I had to save right at the beginning of the mall, and this was the only glitch I encountered in a 30-something hour playthrough. Continuing forward, we see another of those strange, horrific ghosts, repeating again, "Help me." On top of that, the man with us begins repeating, "Kamui is coming, Kamui is growing, you're Kamui!" And then he runs. I love how to signify that he ran away, the little icon on the top left just yeets itself off screen. Turning around, we see a shadow on the ground. At first, I thought it was Akira's. Thought it was cool that the game had the detail of him having a shadow. But then I realized I hadn't seen it before in this whole exploration. So I looked up. We see a bloody woman on the glass sky roof, the moon shining bright behind her, casting her shadow down below. We suddenly transition from stationary art to an animation where she breaks through the sky roof, glass raining down with her. The woman Akira was sent to try and help is dead. We go back to HQ. Kusabi is a little upset at Akira, though more so with himself, blaming it on trusting an amateur. Sumio reassures Akira and tells us not to worry. Kusabi actually does apologize and says he didn't mean it like that. Sumio too reassures him and says that he'll recover. I like this Sumio fella. He's a little quirky like Kusabi, but also just a very good mediator and friendly. The chief director of the heinous crimes unit comes in. He tells Kusabi to take a break at an inn he has booked for him, and Kusabi doesn't argue. He seems to trust the director completely. He tells Sumiyo to take Akira along while he's gone. We learn that Kamui was tied to an art studio named Gladiolus. He once worked there. The woman who still runs it, Ayame, was his art partner. Hachisuka says that we shouldn't go because it would just deepen Ayame's wounds further, and there is less than a 1% chance Kamui would be there. We also see some tension built up between the different teams of the Heinous Crimes unit. It seems like Unit 1, the intelligence unit, mostly stays in the office, and often try to limit Unit 2, the field people. And they see this as antagonization. Despite the others trying to dissuade us, we go with Sumiyo to Gladiolus. Going inside the studio, Sumiyo and Ayame have super funny and weird exchanges, her mostly answering his questions with further questions and repeating things over and over. Has there been contact? What sort of contact? From Kamui. Has there been any contact? To me? Yes, you. Are you seriously asking? Why? Like, here, right? Yes. From Kamui. Yes. Nope. I see. This continues on, but Sumiyo eventually outright asks how Kamui is, and that he believes Kamui has been here. When she asks how, he says, I have a sharp sense of smell, and it smells like a man has been here. Another of those weird, quirky reasons? Toothaches and smells. We walk further into the studio. We try and talk to Sumiyo. He just remarks, what a woman. We interact with her computer, and we see a sleek animation. Different words moving around in different patterns, some going super fast, eventually landing on the words, kill the past. This seems to mirror the background effect we had in the Lunatic's story, with all the flashing words, which is super cool. She remarks how this is nostalgic, and Kamui had the design idea, but she was the one to put it together digitally. We move deeper into the studio, and they both take seats. Do you know why I'm here? No. Sumiyo goes on saying that there is a commonality of the victims and that she is beautiful. What is that? It's a fact. Are you hitting on me or something? After this all gets worked out, that might be nice. What the hell is going on here? Akira over here is standing in the theoretical cuck chair. They continue, and Sumiyo tells her he thinks she'll be targeted next. She thinks his gut feeling won't hold up, though. He says, I mentioned I have a good nose. I have bad ears, though, so maybe it's because of that. But my sense of smell is sharp. Not as sharp as a police dog, but I know Kamui was here. I can almost see his image. Sumiyo then notices something. We go in the closet and find Kamui tied up, a ball gag in his mouth. This is... yes. No way. Yes way. She says she told Kamui to stay hidden. When asked why, she says, he's a killer, right? We get up-close art of her looking directly ahead, worryingly calm. Kamui is now in custody at HQ. Similarly, Ayame is being held in questioning. Kamui is still obviously mentally not there, just staring vacantly ahead, his mouth ajar. Sumiyo asks Hachisuka to go and sit with Ayame, just in case she loses it. Ayame says that she locked Kamui up in order to kill him. Revenge. Because as her partner, he betrayed her. But rightfully everyone questions why she wouldn't just kill him now, since he is wanted. Sumiyo says that killing someone, though, isn't so simple. We cut ahead in time. Morikawa asks if Sumiyo can see if Kamui is mouthing anything, since Sumiyo is proficient in it. Sumiyo says that he is mouthing the word shelter over and over again. Morikawa starts questioning Ayame's story, poking holes in it. Morikawa claims Kamui clearly isn't physically capable of killing anyone anymore. His medical records already said this, and now they see proof of it. And her story of somehow finding him unconscious is nonsense. Morikawa continues leading Sumiyo into what he is thinking, and they arrive at the conclusion that Ayame is lying, and that she maybe even did the murders, and locked Kamui up to have an alibi. As they consider this, they hear a gunshot and run towards it. Hachisuka's gun was stolen from her, and she was shot in the arm by Ayame, who fled. They now piece together that the reason Kamui is mouthing shelter is to tell them that is where Ayame is going, the shelters. We'll learn more about the shelters later, but for now I will say that they were projects to help orphan kids run by the government, but some controversy was attached to it. We go to a shelter exhibition hall, the only one nearby, showing off 8 shelter units. Sumiyo and Akira split up. Sumiyo takes the top 4 and Akira takes the bottom. As we explore, we come across several children on their own, each in a different shelter, saying ominous shit about their mommies missing, and the scary person comes and it's so scary, so I was hiding here so they won't find me. Akira doesn't help any of them, though. Akira is a bit like this the whole game. He's more of a witness and observer than an active person. We eventually rendezvous with Sumiyo in the 5th shelter to corner Ayame. Sumiyo tells us that the job from here on out is his, and he comments, Akira, it sucks, huh? Not being able to protect the one you love. Sumio is just full in love with Ayame immediately. We go into the back room and both Sumio and Ayame level guns at each other. They continue a bit of their quick banter, but she says she would be happy to have him kill her. And Sumio the madman just says in response to that, "Are you coming on to me?" She just replies, "Yes, after this is all over." But she insists again to have him kill her, that she'll kill the kids if he doesn't. They continue back and forth, and she says she doesn't like leaving things incomplete like this. When Sumio asks what, she says, "You're kinda slow, huh?" Me? Yeah. Slow? Slow. This is an insane scene, and weirdly enough, despite the threatened child murder, it's kind of cute. The way that they parallel each other's dialogue from earlier, the repetition of questions, but it's still an insane plot idea. She says the kids that are here are all the kids of the murdered women, and not only that, they're all also Kamui's kids. She says that she's glad she met Sumio, and then she shoves the gun in her mouth. The kids stop her, saying don't. He's in there. I can hear him. Oh yeah, he's laughing. We get this art shift to her sitting on the floor, broken, these three innocent children around her telling their mother's murderer to not kill herself. It's a strong visual. The scene fades out and we see at the same time, back at HQ, Morikawa sees Kamui's expression change. He claims he looked really sad. Naka calls Morikawa a romanticist, though, and that he's good at making stuff up. We cut to the hospital later and look into a cell, see Kamui just standing there, looking up. We learned that Kamui was one of the shelter kids, and that the shelter kids were involved in experiments to try and get them to evolve specific personalities by raising them in certain ways. He would have been raising them from the age of 4 onwards, making the shelters his kind of strange hometown. Somehow, the 3 kids traced back their father's memory to the shelters. We now see an image of young Kamui looking up, just like the adult one. Naka says Kamui's favorite place favors those shelters, solitary confinement. The reason Kamui seeks out the darkness and likes being locked up lies in his upbringing. Morikawa relates to this, though, saying that people are attracted to the underground, such as everyone who is here in this job. Naka continues. Maybe he saw a miniature version of the world in those shelters. What are you, a poet? Morikawa teases. The chapter ends with Kusabi reuniting with Akira and Sumio. You're looking good, big dick. But then that Sumio and Kusabi are going to be on a stakeout for the foreseeable future, and they remark that the Heinous Crimes Unit doesn't have enough people. Sumio looks at us and says, maybe we should. Kusabi seems to agree, telling us he'll show us how it's done. Big dick, hurry up. Decoy Man ends. Spectrum is coming soon. And Over the Moon we get another New Order song. Bizarre love triangle. Alright, so, what the hell was that scene with the children stopping their mother's murderer? Talking about someone being in there? What's going on with this email from the Bat? Or that dazed guy in the mall? Well, rather than continuing to the next Akira chapter, Spectrum, we instead need to back out and choose something else. You see, this game is divided into 2 sides, Transmitter and Placebo. We've been playing this Transmitter side so far, but now we need to switch over to Placebo. The game actually doesn't tell you this. I'm sure many an unfortunate soul has played this game going only through Transmitter. Placebo exists as, well, to be blunt, it's a kind of band-aid to go over Transmitter's nonsensical plots and pacing and fix it. Transmitter was written by Suda, whereas Placebo is written by a duo composed of Masahi Uka and Sako Kato. In Placebo, we play a different POV character, a journalist investigating the ongoings of the Heinous Crimes Unit. Frankly, the chapters make no sense without us going to Placebo. We get introduced to our other half of the game, Tokyo Morishima. When playing this the first time, I had picked up Morishima's name while playing as Akira, because when you are playing as him, the names of those you're speaking to appear by their heads. So seeing his name here, I got excited, since we would get to see why he was in the Babylon shopping center. Tokyo is driving down the road in a bright yellow car. The color palette already feels different to Akira's. Tokyo monologues a bit to himself about how he was once a police reporter for a good news agency, but some shit went down and he quit. Now he's freelance as a writer and investigative journalist, mainly writing about celebrity gossip and other, frankly, useless stuff. He got tired of this now and has taken a job to look into Kamui and find literally everything out about him. We get the sense that Tokyo is fairly self-hating, and asking us, or perhaps just anyone, if we've ever felt like a reject. He says that he has. We see Tokyo return to his apartment complex, a place that we're going to become very familiar with. Now listen, I can't avoid this. There isn't much that happens in the Placebo storyline. Despite this, it has some of the best dialogue in the entire game, but I shit you not. I can summarize 95% of the story right now. Tokyo wakes up, smokes, talks to his pet turtle, emails people, mainly his ex-girlfriend, goes back to sleep, wakes up again, rinse and repeat. Unless it's important for certain story reveals, I am going to start writing Tokyo's parts alongside the main Akira plotline and just writing the important parts. But for now, let's catch up and establish some of the important things. Tokyo monologues a bit about his life, and we get to explore his apartment. All 2 squares of it. It's very much a stereotypical bachelor's pad. He chain smokes, sleeps on the couch, and his work desk is a pool table, complete with literal cup ramen on top of it. I really do enjoy this art style difference one POV to the next. It shakes things up very well, and Tokyo's apartment, while small and crummy, does feel a lot brighter and more welcoming than Akira's locations and apartment, even with the weird bat art on the wall that's never addressed despite the bat playing an important part in the story. As Tokyo, the art of scenes that we get tend to have a more bright color palette, though Tokyo's character portraits tend to have a more simplistic and two-toned style, like police sketches. It's interesting that his POV has the individual's art be so simple, yet the bigger scenes are more bright, pretty, and detailed. Almost like, as Tokyo, we'll see the bigger picture. Okay, I'm pushing that a bit. Even the way Tokyo views himself is vastly different. In the POV of Akira, Tokyo looks normal, maybe even a little baby-faced and vulnerable. The way that Tokyo views himself in his chapters, he appears crude and frowning, almost like a punk, which ties into his own nihilistic internal monologue, even if reality shows him a lot differently. It's a super intelligent way to work art into the narrative itself, where you are understanding a character's whole point of view of the world through just seeing how they view it. The majority of Tokyo's story takes place through his computer. In it, we get several emails a day, sometimes subscription letters that have daily quotes, news, and even one that is all about carnivorous plants. The plants one ends up never being relevant, but there are what feels like dozens of them that we get. He also gets emails from his employer, family, and various other characters that we will meet. For this opening chapter, the first email he gets is from someone called Shige, who says that Tokyo owes him 50,000 yen. He thinks it's time to pay him back, since it's the end of the millennium. Tokyo, though, worms his way out of it, saying the end of the millennium is actually 2001, not 2000. So it isn't time yet, but he'll pay him back next year. We also get segments where Tokyo records his thoughts in digital diary. Tokyo is honestly hilarious. He has a dry wit, honesty, and sarcasm, though also an unhealthy dose of self-hatred. He openly writes in his diary he doesn't plan to pay Shige back ever, and he rants about the meaning of living in the now and what that means. He leaves the computer for a moment and we get to meet Red, his pet turtle, who is the cutest thing ever. Red will actually have different reactions chapter to chapter. We go to speak to him, sometimes seeming sad or angry or anxious. Tokyo also seems to always be thinking about Red. Tokyo's online usernames are also named things like Turtle Guy. It's very cute, and he calls Red his partner. Tokyo tells Red, and thus us, that his job will come to Kamui is from his old boss, Yawnathan, and he writes up in his diary information he has learned, which is more or less what I've already mentioned in this video. He also has some ramblings about how shitty the world is. I mentioned how many times he has those ramblings. This whole video will have another couple of hours added to it. So just know that it happens a lot. Tokyo gets into contact with an ex named Erica. She still works at the news agency he quit at, and he says that he will use her as a shield for the job due to her connection to it. He tries to get her to help him with finding out information on Kamui, but she rightfully gets upset at him for obviously just trying to use her, and hangs up. He then writes a really scummy journal entry saying he just has to put the moves on her to get her to help, that she'd cry if she heard him say that. Yeah, Tokyo's a dick. Erica sends an email to Tokyo titled Mr. Genius Passionate Writer, and chews Tokyo out for randomly hitting her up, and ends the email in saying that his phone calls are a nuisance, and he only ever thinks about himself. Then she sends a little PS email giving him help anyways, saying the Heinous Crimes Unit are in charge of the case, and admits that she's been reading his articles. Deflecting though, saying it's just because it's what's handed to her at the hair salon. She seems disappointed that he went from a police writer to a celebrity gossip guy, and is helping him just to see what he's capable of. Using Erica's tip, Tokyo drives to the Heinous Crimes Unit to talk to Kusabi. Weird to see him in a different art style. Say I prefer his transmitter design more, but it's still recognizably him. Tokyo tries to get some info from Kusabi, but Kusabi mostly deflects. Inohana, the guy who hired Tokyo, tells him he has an informant named Inzawa, who saw Kamui, and can give Tokyo information. They're supposed to meet at a cafe called The Prussian. Tokyo meets with Inzawa, and he looks like a relatively normal, sweaty, older salaryman. He sits down and says to start, I saw Kamui. He gives Tokyo information that he saw Kamui in his neighborhood, at the Babylon shopping center. When Tokyo asks what Kamui looked like, or his mood, Inzawa simply says, he was like a new moon. He looked like the moon. Tokyo gets confused, and Inzawa reveals himself to be a sort of distant fan of Kamui, saying that he possesses a terrible creative power, and his murders are an extension of his art and creativeness, and he can use his genius creativity to distort and shift reality. Tokyo gets insulted, saying that he's just a murderer, and confronts Inzawa on this. Inzawa just brushes it off and calls Tokyo rude. Tokyo decides to check out the shopping center, and we actually don't get to see his time at Babylon. Instead, we cut to him waking up at night. Eerily silent, not even lighting a smoke or talking to Red, he sits at his computer. The quote of the day sent, "Death is the great leveler." And he goes to write in his diary. The woman at Babylon, a world like yellow pus. This headache just won't go away. I still hear that voice, it won't go away. Something was wrong with me. That girl died and then Kamui. I don't know. Go away. And then he laughs to himself maniacally. Then cut to Tokyo going to a bar called the Jackhammer. The bartender is a friendly, quirky guy who says that Tokyo looks like he just got dumped, and that if that is the case, he has some advice. He says that Tokyo needs to buy a knife and start whittling wood, and that this will calm him down more than anything. And this is something that people around the world have been doing for a long time. The Indians did it. Same as when monks would carve statues of Buddha. Humans may have even begun using tools because of this, in order to calm themselves down, whittling something. Making something out of clay. These were likely the first ways in which humans utilized their creative power. And so, when God was feeling a bit down, maybe he decided to cheer himself up and got some clay and made people. Tokyo says it's some laughable shit and leaves. This scene stuck with me, and made me like this bartender character right away. Tokyo wakes up the next morning and reads about the victim of the Babylon shopping center. The victim's chest was hollowed out with a sharp blade. Tokyo also gets an email from Erika, who seems concerned, since she heard he was there too, and was in a brief coma. She asks him to please email her when he reads the email. Eventually he tries to recount what flashes he has. He sees a woman in his mind, and questions who Ayame is, and if he saw her at Babylon. He goes to Babylon to try to remember something. He goes to light a cigarette, the brand named Placebo, named for this half of the story, and realizes that he forgot his lighter. Then a voice enters his mind, giggling and asking if he needs a light. The voice says he may be just like them. All the while, the voice gets louder, telling him to listen. He sees a vivid image of a woman lighting his cigarette. The woman enters his mind and keeps screaming for help. He begins ranting, asking, "Who does he think he is? You saw it, didn't you? It's already begun. I'm inside you. There's no going back now. The past is alive." Tokyo remembers more. Got pet food for Red, met a woman, she lit a cigarette. Then she asked for help. Actually, multiple people asked for help. And then he met another woman. At that point, he was delirious and remembers nothing aside from Akira waking him up. From the moment that he saw Akira, something happened to him. Residual thoughts of the dead woman entered him, began speaking to him. He sees a flash of the ghostly woman. He says that he stopped being himself, and then saw Kamui. Not physically, but still he saw him. And that Kamui wasn't like the moon, like Inzawa said, and that he's instead like a huge swollen sun. And he seems to more or less accept that he does in fact have a dead woman's consciousness inside of him. He finally emails Erika, and is completely impersonal, just asking her to get some info on Ayame. What a dick. Next morning she calls him out, but says that she's glad she at least knows that he's alive, and sends him some info on Ayame. We see that the news finally got the info on the arrest, and listen, I'm not gonna lie, when playing this the first time I kept hoping this chapter would end, as it does just keep stretching on, and is rather repetitive. In my notes, I literally typed while playing this, "We just keep waking up in his room, I'm so tired." I just wanted to recount this chapter for Tokyo fully, since he won't get much screen time in the video for a while. Tokyo meets with Inzawa again to see if he knows Ayame. Inzawa seems to idolize Ayame, like, a lot, far more than Kamui even. He also excitedly asks Tokyo if he saw Kamui and what he was like, but Tokyo shoots it down. Inzawa says Ayame is actually above Kamui, and the fact that she's a woman is important. Man can only spread his seed, whereas a woman is able to choose seed and raise it. He goes on saying that she had feelings for Kamui, not love, but desire, that she desired his child. So when she learned that Kamui had other women who had his children and not her, she grew jealous and killed them, as well as kidnapping Kamui to procure a child of her own. He also says that Kamui wanted many children, no matter with who, to make a next generation. but Ayame instead believed in a sort of royal family, if only her and Kamui combined. Tokyo again gets upset this weirdo and asks him if this is his own little fanfiction or the truth, and Enzawa says that he's their neighbor. Tokyo leaves and pins his report. This wasn't actually the Kamui case, it was the Ayame case. She did everything, and Kamui is still catatonic. And as players, of course, we are clarified that Ayame was pregnant, which explains the weird psychic children stopping her from ending herself. The person they said was laughing inside of her was a baby. The chapter ends with Erika and Tokyo agreeing to meet in a chat room, and when he gets in, she's upset that he took a while. He says sorry, he's a slow walker, turtle guy, get it? She says she doesn't have time for his jokes, and says openly that she wants them to work together, in a business capacity, on this, and he agrees. She says to be honest, she still hates him, but the message is cut off, and corrupted by a jargle of text, and Erika disconnects. A mysterious person enters the chat, named the Bat, and tells Tokyo he should stop looking into Kamui, and says he knows that Tokyo saw, and also amplified Kamui. Kamui was sleeping inside you, and you were to be killed. And then he disconnects from the chat room, and the chapter ends. So, that was Tokyo's first chapter. A mixed one, to be honest, very slow, had the pace of a lawnmower, and a lot of information just regurgitated. But the character writing and new revelations were very good. The middle of this game functions more as side stories, anything to directly do with the Kamui plotline. I like this. I'm a fan of anthologies, and honestly, an entire game of just these side stories in the world with these characters would have been great too. Because these stories aren't that important, though, I'm going to go through them a little bit more quickly than the first chapters and the final ones. So, let's begin with our first one. Transmitter 2 Spectrum begins a narration from a young boy. He's speaking to his friend, Hikaru, who has disappeared. He says he's lonely, and thinks the mean kids in class have Hikaru locked up, so he has to rescue him. We also get told about Hikaru. He is kind and quiet, but he talks a lot to the narrator, and sounds like a frog whenever he laughs. This entire segment is really well done. The dialogue feels genuinely like it is from a kid, and it's heartbreaking. Also get some cool live-action footage with art of the kid imposed over it, as well as footage of the two boys playing. But then the whole thing ends on a gut punch. While the kid goes over their shared friends and associates, he says, Kunihiko is good at drawing. He draws really cool giant robots. Right, Hikaru? And then he looks over to a memorial shrine that has Hikaru's picture on it. This surprised me when I first played it, to the point of where I did feel my eyes water a bit. We cut to Kusabi and Sumio staking out a big house in a rich neighborhood. This scene is cut to several times in this chapter, as well as during Tokyo's. We start with Sumio ranting about Ayame. He seems to have totally fallen in love with her, despite every red flag imaginable. Kusabi rightfully chews him out. You fall in love with a serial killer? What are you, stupid? Well, yeah, but she's hot, right? And they continue on for a bit of fun back and forth with the normal obscenities in this game, Sumio insisting that he felt something special. We also learn that Kusabi is pretty protective and trusting of Sumio, telling him like, hey, you can tell me this stuff, but don't be telling anyone else. They're interrupted by Hachisuka, who says something has happened, and she needs their help. But Sumio says they can't go to it due to the stakeout. He says that she should go herself with Morikawa. But Morikawa is missing, which seems to be usual for him. She says she'll go alone until Sumio and Kusabi tell her to bring along Big Dick. They call Akira and we cut to his apartment. After playing as Tokyo, Akira's apartment really is so dark and moody in comparison. Unpleasant. Akira stares at a spooky reflection in the TV again and checks his email. Another email from the Bat, directed to the main character. He says he is Akira's neighbor, and he's been watching from the shadows. As a PS, asks if he knows Tokyo, and if he does to avoid him, because he's a very dangerous man. Akira meets with Hachisuka and agrees to help her. There appears to have been a jumper, named Haruma, who lived on the third story of an apartment complex, the same one Tokyo lives at. For now, nothing points to murder, but we still have to investigate. The doctor doing an on-site look at the body suddenly stops and tells Hachisuka that Morikawa needs to get in touch to play mahjong again. It's humorous, and I think also plays well as to the theme of desensitization of violence. Just casually chatting over a person's dead body about playing mahjong. After a few scenes of the police interrogating some people who saw nothing, Morikawa shows up. complaining that it's already over and that he went as fast as he could. He says that Hachisuka must have replaced him real quick, that women always go for the younger guys. They keep bickering some. Morikawa tells us we can go now because he's here. But as we go to leave, we see a kid higher up on the balcony, the words "help me" repeating. We scale up to the 4th floor and find the kid, named Koichi, who keeps asking us to help his friend. Help, Hikaru. Please, help Hikaru. At HQ, the heinous crimes unit begin fighting over various things, each other's jobs and pasts, and that they're annoyed that Sumio and Kusabi have been at the stakeout for days instead of being here. Hachisuka tells the boss that she can't trust Morikawa and doesn't want him as a partner anymore. But instead, he says he'll reassign her if she can't do her job. And outright says that she's just here due to her father being the mayor, saying even that maybe the mayor has gone senile. She then goes over to Morikawa and says she is tired of him and the way he does his job as a slacker. She says outright they aren't partners anymore, and she isn't a sidekick. Naka ends up siding with Morikawa, saying her style of investigating, that being profiling, is outdated. Naka also outright says that they're having a lover's quarrel, and how, as part of his job, he used to investigate fellow police love affairs. Morikawa says Naka is in love with Hachisuka, but he denies it, saying he's only into younger girls. What the hell? The boss calls Akira over, and Akira seems to hear the words "help me" again coming from the boss, but he clearly hasn't said it. The boss says Akira helped a lot in the Kamui case, and that this job is basically Akira's test run before he's allowed into the heinous crimes unit properly. The boss says he doesn't think Akira could live in a world that isn't dark, and Akira seems to agree. Morikawa says we're buddies now, and that he's our partner for this case. Morikawa, being Morikawa, drives us to the apartment complex, and then immediately ditches us, saying he has minor business to attend to, and that we should call a taxi if we need to leave. We cut to the stakeout again. Kusabi is laying down in the car, telling a story about how he won the jackpot. He felt like it was a 6th sense, so he must be a superhero. And it must be awesome for Sumio, since his partner can use cinema kinesis. Sumio corrects him, saying telekinesis. They continue back and forth with random shit, until finally Sumio asks, "You're super bored, aren't you?" Silence. Yeah. These scenes make this case feel structured like a movie or TV episode with their random B-plot cutaways. And while they add nothing, I wouldn't want them gone. Akira talks to the kid at his house, and he says everyone suspiciously stopped talking about Hikaru, so he must have been kidnapped and that there's foul play. Akira seems to ask about the kid's mom. Occasionally the dialogue treats it as if Akira has spoken, but we never see it. Koichi says his mom is at work. She does a grown-up job. I cried a lot when I was small, but now I like being alone. It's fun. Man, this game bounces wacky with heartbreaking really well. We see more footage of the two kids playing. He tells us Hikaru's home is complicated, that his mom had a boyfriend he didn't like, which he relates to. Speaking on boyfriends, he says, "Some are nice, and some are violent. Since they're stronger than you, you can't fight back. Both mine and Hikaru's house only have a mom and a kid, but I keep telling him it's nothing to be ashamed of." The conversation eventually comes to an end, but with the kid telling Akira to meet him in a secret bunker in the parking lot. While leaving, we see a ghostly image of Hikaru saying, "Help, Koichi." We cut back to the stakeout and get an iconic scene. Kusabi seems to have lost 50,000 yen on a horse race, and it's 22 days till his next paycheck. He starts breaking down, asking what he's gonna do. He asks Sumio for some cash, but Sumio shoots him down. Sumio tells him to ask Naka. Kusabi says that'll make him look weak. Regardless, Sumio calls Naka anyways, and tells him Kusabi wants to ask him something. "I'm gonna ask you straight up. Can you lend me some cash?" Yeah, 50,000 yen. The scene cuts away. Back to Akira the next day, we find a little hand-drawn note labeled "Dear Detective," with drawn instructions of how to get to the secret bunker. These kids built a whole-ass underground base under the trash cans with support beams, electricity, furniture. Listen, I built my fair share of clubhouses as a kid, but I never got better than some tarps, cinder blocks, ladders, and plastic chairs. Holy shit. I have a cute little scene of the kid breaking down all the people at school who may be suspects. Bullies, suspicious friends, and so on. He even made portraits of each of them. After giving his little briefing, he calls himself Columbone. Columbo reference? Hell yeah. We cut away to the stakeout again. Our boy's debt has gotten up to 100k. Jesus. They talk some, the crestfallen Kusabi says he may as well just die. They change the subject, complaining about how long the stakeout is taking, and Sumio says it can't be helped. They have an interesting exchange. Kusabi said the director told him, "Detectives don't use the words 'can't be helped.' Don't ever say that in front of me again. The boss looks like he was going to stab me, so Sumio, don't ever use that phrase. If we give up, we lose. That's a detective's job. Burn that into your brain. Okay then, Sumio responds. If I decide I want to die, then I'll use those words. Oh yeah, don't worry, I'll kill your ass. Akira gets an email from someone named Takeshi Kinjo, saying he's looking forward to meeting us, and to give the girl his regards. She's bound to be late, but please don't stop her. She's trying to enter a brand new world. We get a scene as well where Morikawa and Hashisuka seem to fight, then comfort each other. The few words we make out do seem to reveal them as definitely being in a relationship of some kind, at least physically. She also says, I'm just a doll. I can't change anything. We move past this scene and return to investigate the apartments. Fully, this time. I'm going to cut most of this out, but we are able to knock on every door in the apartment and get answers from people. All of them are interesting, and they each have their own little things to say. I get one guy who's nervous and just talks about how he has an alibi because he went to Blockbuster. We learn pretty quickly that, yes, the boy's friend Hikaru is dead. In fact, he died while the boys were playing, because Hikaru had a weak heart. Other people give us info too, both on the kids and the jumper, one saying that the jumper rarely left his house, due to some ailment. When we get to the 5th floor, we actually get to meet Tokyo, since we are, after all, at his apartment complex. Funny enough, when we play as him, we actually get to experience Akira knocking on his door every day, which is funny because I did do that, and I'm sure most players did, to see when we would get responses from knocking. From Tokyo's point of view, Akira really does look terrifying. He snaps and says Akira's face pisses him off, and he slams the door. While we're here, I may as well go over Tokyo's side of the story quickly. We see that Tokyo took the bartender's advice and has been carving a wooden knife. He admits it actually is quite relaxing. We also get some scenes of them together in the bar talking about it, as well as some other stuff, like when Tokyo tries to show the bartender a picture of Red that he keeps in his pocket constantly. But the bartender thinks that Red isn't cute and is ugly, which Tokyo gets really upset about and says, "Can't believe you don't see how lovely he is." Not gonna lie, these scenes are so good. They're as good as the main ones, even. He learns through the news that Haruma died. He didn't even learn in person from a neighbor or anything. He reflects on this and how numb everyone has become. That with all the horrible news we have access to, even when something close happens, literally next door, you basically don't care. And it just feels like fiction because it may as well be that to you. He meets with Kusabi at the stakeout. Not sure how he knew he was there, but alright. They chat some, don't exchange much. Eventually Kusabi asks Tokyo, "Can you lend a brother 50,000 yen?" Tokyo's second time being asked that in this game. I'll be honest, this Tokyo chapter in particular feels useless, since the main case is pretty straightforward. Tokyo continues talking with Erika, and enlists her to look into Koichi and the jumper, mainly because Akira seems interested in them. Erika ends up befriending Koichi, and it's pretty cute. We also get to see Erika in person finally, when Tokyo and her meet in the park. Erika says she feels guilty about using Koichi, which Tokyo clearly feels some guilt too. Not for that, though, instead relating it to how he uses Erika. He says some depressing stuff about how kids aren't truly innocent, and that the idea of that is bullshit. Erika disagrees and gets upset and leaves. He also writes an email to her clearly pining, but after a while deletes it before he sends it. He also has a cute moment where in his diary, after writing a bunch of depressing things, he just has an update that he's carving a turtle figurine. Erika ends up getting close to Koichi, mirroring Akira's closeness that we got in the main plotline. Nothing comes of it though, since eventually Koichi stands her up and gives her a letter saying, essentially, he can't just be friends with everyone who is nice to him. But she was nice, looked lonely, and smelled nice. But he has to end it now. Do you see how I say this chapter is kind of useless? The only plot progression that we really get is that Tokyo gets in touch with a hacker named Slash, who he hires to look into the bat. And we end on a cute scene of Tokyo reminiscing about his childhood and realizing he doesn't know how old Red is when he asks what Red was like as a young kid. Back to Akira, we investigate the jumper's apartment, and only find that there's a sticker over his keyhole stopping him from getting in. And we see the ghost of the kid again, this time in that terrifying Cenobite form, saying, "I won't allow it. I won't let anyone bully Koichi." Then his form changes to a more pure, shining form, smiling up at Koichi, who's on the balcony waving us over. We meet with Koichi, and he says he remembers some more details. Recently, Hikaru got terrified. They went into a haunted house together. We get super cool live-action footage of a haunted house, but Hikaru got scared. Kept running because someone from the third story was chasing them. But he interrupts himself and says he doesn't want to talk anymore. We return to HQ and are told we're being called to the break room. What occurs is one of the most bullshit but iconic scenes in the entire game. Morikawa is lounging and says it's time we take a break from the story and see how we've done handling the case on our own. He asks if we've had fun, and he says that Koichi is the key to the case, even if it's clear that the after effects of the incident are still there. Then we need to shake the truth loose from him. But he also wants to test our memory too, saying the truth of the case is already there, so we should do a quiz. A simple 3-choice one, he says. He calls it 100 question kumite. And when I tell you he actually asks us 100 questions, I mean it. By God, I mean it. Not only that, we only have 10 seconds to answer each question. No breaks. He says that he himself made it to 300 questions, and Kusabi made it to 500 questions. And the boss decides at the end whether we passed or not. We only have one chance to do this, and we begin. And it is 100 questions of 90s pop culture, video game trivia, movie trivia, history, random nature stuff, and actual questions pertaining to the investigation, including ones that outright spoil the ending if you hadn't found it out. Afterwards, regardless of what we scored, the boss thinks we have it in us, and Akira is officially welcomed to the Heinous Crimes Unit. He tells us we have to rid the boy of his darkness. We return to the boy's house. We try to get him to tell us everything, but he stops us first to tell us one final thing. He remembered that the day before the chase happened, Hikaru came with him and his mom to a restaurant. They ate food together and had a good time, and Hikaru laughed like a frog again. But he begins recalling Hikaru's death. There was a man standing on the balcony. Koichi says that he always watched them. When the man chased them, they escaped into a narrow alley. They got split up, and Hikaru was cornered by the man while a train came on. The excitement of it all killed Hikaru, which the man wanted. We see this heartbreaking image of Koichi crying, like full-on realistic ugly crying. He recounts it saying he was so scared and ran away as fast as he could because he didn't want to die, but he left Hikaru alone and couldn't save him. He feels so guilty because if he didn't, maybe he could have saved Hikaru. We cut once more to the stakeout. They speak about how Akira got the case solved, and again, contemplate how long they're going to be doing this. They both get heated again and argue, threatening each other. But we end with a cliffhanger, both of them noticing something glittering, coming from the house that they're watching. One more cut to HQ with the story laid out for us fully. Koichi buried Hikaru's death deep inside. And also, the jumper, Haruma, was the one who killed Hikaru. Koichi was scared that Haruma would kill him too. Haruma had issues with his autonomic nerves, meaning that he couldn't play outside when he was younger, nor really have an outside or social life, and was resentful. The children living here could have what he hadn't. The police have different theories. Hachisuka thinks that Koichi killed Haruma on purpose, but Morikawa thinks he did it by accident, and that he actually tried to get himself killed by Haruma due to the guilt he felt over Hikaru's death, luring Haruma to kill him by blocking his keyhole with a sticker and antagonizing him. But something went wrong with his plan. Perhaps even Hikaru's ghost pushed Haruma off. I will say we do learn the Tokyo plot that Koichi admits to murdering Haruma. Police crew debate the idea of killing your inner child, which is funny, since my last video on Fate and Betula covered that topic quite a lot, so I won't repeat my thoughts here. They come to the conclusion that Koichi, being such a pure heart who loved his friend, is a rare miracle in human beings, and that Koichi's crime was committed out of pure love and goodness, not malice. Discussion ends with Morikawa saying he hopes the kid holds on to that clear, pure mind, as we get a photo of the boys together on screen. However, the case itself ends on a rather cringy note, with Hachisuka apologizing to us, saying she got hysteric, listing off everything from being shot to being bothered by Morikawa, her health, her hair, her sleep, the boss's cologne, and more. She says, so basically, I was on my period. And she sticks her tongue out and says she'll go on a date with us to make up for it. This just comes across very much like dated, haha, women emotional humor. Anyways. Afterwards, though, we get a live-action recording of Hikaru and Koichi's final meal together. The one where he said they were so happy, and that Hikaru laughed like a frog at. Once live-action footage ends, a simple drawing of a frog remains. Beautiful, touching moment to end this side story on. Chapter 3 begins with some industrial animation that feels like Nine Inch Nails should be playing over it. We get the title over a furnace. Parade. Afterwards, we cut to some different animation outside a rainy factory, and images of children and monsters. The text telling us a fairy tale. A princess and 3 young boys' memories. The cloud turned black, and the village died off. Afterward, the nightmare-eating chimera disappears with the wind. We then see an animation of a young girl standing at the base of a giant tree, and she looks up at the moon. We're at the stakeout, where Akira has joined Sumio and Kasabi on it. Sumio has a chat with Kasabi. asking him if he likes fantasy, but Kasabi calls it kid shit. I take offense to this, but we'll continue. Sumio begins telling a story. He starts off by saying some fairy tales are a way to brainwash children. That originally, they come from a messed up story that has been simplified. And their realistic depressing stories suck, so they get turned into fantasy to make them happier and easier to palate. He tells a fairy tale about a beautiful princess. A tyrannical giant serpent fell in love with her, so he took her away. Then came a band of heroes who fought the serpent and rescued the princess. But this story isn't true. It wasn't a serpent, but a human. And the princess was dead despite the hero's efforts. Humans killed another human for revenge. That's just a crime, Kasabi says. Yeah, fairy tales are crimes. The unrealistic fantasy that happens in real life is crime. They then debate if they'd be the heroes, but Kasabi says he wouldn't, because crime is crime, no matter the reason. I like this conversation, and the idea of human evil and actions being explained in a greater story, like dragons being manifestations of people and power hoarding wealth. It's much easier to get across these ideas with a big, fiery lizard than a human being to some. And similarly, these stories can be easier spread when the people these stories are talking about are still in power, and may try and silence them. Here we get one of the central ideas again, that according to those in power, crime is crime no matter the reason. And I will clarify, it's quite clear to me that the game's thesis is actually the opposite of this. Though we mostly see extremists and crazies, I think the people in power, such as the politicians and police, are often horrible people. They're criminals in themselves. And this chapter is more or less entirely about that idea, and even the last one. Koichi, though he committed a crime, was still a kid. And he's even let off of it because the crime that he committed was deemed less evil. But still they say crime is crime, and clearly even they don't believe that. Akira is sent on a patrol around the house that they are staking out and finds nothing. But when he gets back to the car, the house suddenly explodes. We get slightly more realistic art of Sumio and Kasabi. Kasabi telling Sumio to burn this image into his eyes to never forget it. Sumio says that he won't. We cut forward and attend a police meeting, led by Central. We learn that the mansion was owned by the chairman of a rather large and important company. He was receiving written coded threats. One saying, "The monkey laughs." This seemed to frighten the chairman, and a patrol was put around his house. No human remains were found in the mansion, and the chairman, named Yukimura, went missing, leading everyone to believe that he had been kidnapped. The chairman's company holds a great influence over the economy, so now the entire police force is being mobilized to find him and the culprits. This makes you question, would this amount of effort be put into a normal person who was kidnapped? Of course it wouldn't. They even say they are counting this as a personal attack on the country's government and police. A businessman being equated to a direct symbol of a country. Yet, if an actual poor worker that keeps that country running was kidnapped, they would not be given the same luxury as this businessman. The videotape is sent to the police, and we get live-action cutscene of Yukimura tied in a basement, a blow-up doll and a table next to him. That is it. Just confirmation that the chairman is alive. People try to debate if this could be for money, but Kasabi confidently feels that it isn't. We go to the HQ of the Yukimura Corporation, named the Snow Tower, and there we come across the higher-up members of the company. These soulless businessmen, with their art drawn purposely distorted, like demons and monsters in a Junji Ito manga. I absolutely love this art choice. Showing them scheming, shouting about giving one person data, and saying that they'll lay off peons of an entire department who rely on their jobs, paycheck to paycheck. And also their scramble for power now the chairman is missing, biting at whatever crumbs he left behind. I love it so much, showing that these people, who on paper are just human beings, as arguably what they are. Fairy tale monsters concerned only with greed and power, but not a moral bone in their body. The police even notice this, and say basically that every person on the board is a suspect. Even those who aren't still want him dead to be for the power scramble. Here we meet the second in command of Central, a man named Kosaka, who seems to have an immense devotion to Central and a sense of honor. We learn that the entirety of Snow Tower has essentially a small army of police outside and inside protecting it. And again, I question, would a civilian location have this effort put into it because of one kidnapping? We suddenly receive news that they believe they have found one of the culprits believed to be the bomber, a man named Hiseki, at a place called Three Monkeys apartment. But before we can question him, we find that he's hung himself. This is 3 games in a row I've covered now that involve someone hanging themselves. Tune in next time to see. Anyways, the police were sent another tape showing a shadow of a person moving around. Camera pans over to show the chairman still tied up. Suddenly hard cuts to blood or something similar being thrown onto the blow-up doll. Kusaka calls to ask Kusabi for help, even though he shouldn't, but Kusabi refuses to. Kusaka threatens to commit harakiri if he doesn't. When Kusabi dares him to go ahead and cut, he actually does, and the scene ends. Let's cut to Tokyo real quick and see what he's been up to. His apartment complex has had construction nearby and is continually waking him up and driving him crazy. The sound is even tormenting his poor little turtle, Red. The drilling noise is also present continually in the game and makes this chapter a nightmare to play. I actually had to just turn my headphones off. The hacker that Tokyo messaged to look into the bat, gives some info on the bat, and quite notably, finds the email that was used to access the chat room. Tokyo takes Red away in his car for a break from the noise, and makes a little character sheet for the bat, assuming things about them to try and find out a motive. He eventually emails the bat and says he wants to talk about the bat's buddy, Kamui. He gets smokes from a place called Mulholland. I would have sworn that this was a David Lynch reference to Mulholland Drive, as Moonlight Syndrome had a place called Lost Highway in reference to David Lynch, but this game came out a couple of years before Mulholland Drive, so it couldn't be. Unless whenever this was localized to English years later, they worked it in. I don't know. The bat responds to an email titled Parade, saying if he solves some riddles, the bat will tell him everything. The riddles, Tokyo finds out with both the help of the bartender and Erica, are references to Mother Goose children's books, but with the words twisted to be more vulgar. There was actually a pretty cute scene with Erica and him solving the Mother Goose's riddles at a park together. Tokyo says when he gets the money from the job, he'll take them on a vacation to Hawaii. They find out the answers for the riddles are blind man, needle and thread, hell, and parents. When Tokyo sends these answers, the bat sends him the same fairy tale we read at the beginning of Parade, written the exact same way. And the email date somehow says it's August 2nd, 1979. We're gonna cut away back to Akira for now. With the biggest lead found dead and nothing found in his apartment, we turn towards investigating the tape itself at the forensics lab. And Tsumio actually reveals that he knows an awful lot about how VHS tapes work, and digital software, and how to hide messages within tapes that function basically like using invisible ink. Using this know-how, we find a message. July 26th, 600 billion yen diamond. So it is a ransom of some kind. To get this kind of money, though, the police end up mortgaging all of Yukimura's land to sell it, meaning that he will lose a lot of his assets, but in turn, buy back his life. We receive a call from the perp. Using a robotic voice, he instructs us to get certain tools for delivering the ransom. For some reason, he chooses Akira to be the one to go through with it. We have a pocket knife, radio attached to a headset, and a taser. The person gives orders through the radio. Enjoy drive. Directing Akira to a trash disposal facility, also called the crematory. When we get there, the voice says, "Let's rock and roll." The person on the other end ends up trolling Akira with useless, over-the-top instructions to look up and down and go certain ways, and at one point even spin in place. But eventually, Akira opens up a control panel, tases it, and disables a security gate, and has a rendezvous with the perp. An animated cutscene plays and shows a man atop one of the smokestacks, dressed in a face mask with a jeweler's magnifying glass on one eye. With zipline, Akira sends over the diamond. Man inspects it, making sure it's real. And when he does, his robotic voice speaks, simply saying, "Kill the past," and then unmasks himself, revealing his lips to be sewn shut. He jumps into the smokestack, falling down to the roaring flame, Diamond going along with him, getting lost. We get another cutscene showing people breaking into a building and finding the tied-up Chairman Yukimura alive. We learn that he is for the most part unharmed, though with a 600 billion yen loss. He's unlikely to ever recover financially. Rather than getting money, screwing over Yukimura was their goal, to the point that when this was finished, they didn't even care to be around living anymore. Kusaka arrives in Central and tells Kusabi he's being scouted into Central, and that now he wears his harakiri scar as a badge of honor. They discuss the case and how Kusaka has come to understand the Heinous Crimes Unit's methods, believing that certain crimes should not be seen by the public to protect them. Though frankly, it sounds more like it's protected those in power, so people are not inspired to do similar crimes against the upper class. He even says the news should not report on certain things, and that since it didn't have any direct murders in it, it may inspire those to fall victim to crime. Though what he really means is inspire them to do crime, showing small people that they can act too and do things without outright murder. Quote, "By covering everything up, we take away the chance for certain people to assert themselves. This is to say, the chance for the weak to fight back. They'll be left with no way." Wow, this game has already been pretty real, but this is real. Do not show people there's a way to resist, because without seeing it, they will never be inspired to. We then cut to a scene, a uniquely styled one that I think is only done here, showing art of the chairman meeting with Sumio as cars drive past. We cut to the snow tower where Yukimura is holding a board meeting. Again, we see the businessmen drawn like demons, their eyes only white voids like possessed people. Not only that, but we also get to see literal double speak, as they say things like, they're happy the chairman is back, only to say to themselves or to the others, "So you're back, you bastard. We've been waiting for you. You should have died." They also inform him they fired all of the employees in the security sector, both due to them failing, as well as a way to save money. Yukimura addresses them, apologizing for his absence. He then goes into a small rant about the past of the company, and how it was built on many sacrifices, and that he wants to liquidate that history, that as of today he's ending it. Today is the day he washes their sullen bodies clean. He then orders them to die together with Yukimura. He sets off a bomb, killing everyone and the company in one fell swoop, as well as killing the past. We learn they did it on a holiday, where no normal workers were there. Only the chairman and board members were killed. It's also done in a way that it can't be ignored. Fireworks. No way to hide it from the media. Kasabi is confused by all of this and enlists Akira to look into the past of the company and why this all could have happened. They drive to a Yukimura warehouse and go through many files. There they find out that a small village called Mikamo-77 became flooded with dangerous chemicals from a Yukimura factory in the area, causing sickness to everyone there and even poisoning their drinking water with hallucinogens from the runoff of the factory. There were violent protests called parades by the locals, one even killing a young girl named Riru, who is related to the Yukimura family. Though officially one person was charged with her murder, there was evidence that it was a large group that did it. Eventually, the village was closed, and the area became only an area for factories. Kasabi and Akira find one more secret file, with a lot of redacted text speaking of boys who tried to defend the girl, but something happened to them. Kasabi scoffs at this, remembering the fairy tale Sumio told him. He says fairy tales are real then, playing the girl from the rich Yukimura family a princess, the three kids defending the girl as heroes, and a huge serpent being the factory, or maybe even the crowd or Yukimura family. Then confusingly, Kusabi says, "Let's go see his ass off." I can only assume that the redacted info we saw is actually only redacted for the player, as it does list off some letters of the kids' names, and we're about to get a confusing and surprising reveal. We cut to a helicopter ride with Kusabi in it, flying towards Mikamo-77. Sumio is there. Kusabi talks about how we've all been to a twilight town, a place that once was alive and now has aged to be a place that no one wants to be at. Sumio then says it's nostalgic. It's been 20 years since he was here. That this is the final parade, a big one. Kusabi asks him if he wants to go watch the fireworks from farther away. They fly away, and we cut to an animation of a sad-looking girl tied to a chair, and a huge wave of explosions coming from Mikamo-77, spreading for miles, the light of it sparkling like something from a fairy tale, and the girl's body sparkling away with it, slowly dissolving. It's kind of beautiful, despite the wanton destruction. You see the girl close her eyes and disappear. We get one final conversation between the two partners. Kusabi asks him why he went this far. Sumio says simply, to kill the past. Kusabi asks what's in the past. All of me, responds Sumio. Kusabi then says the past is sometimes important, and his real fight begins now, not in the past. He starts giving Sumio advice. Be calm. Don't buckle. And we cut to a scene, showing their first meeting years ago. A young Sumio walks in and says that he's his new partner. But Kusabi flatly tells him to leave because he doesn't like career types. But Sumio says he isn't a career type. He only just got out of high school and was scouted for the job. This intrigues Kusabi, but Kusabi says his suit looks like shit. If he's going to be a detective, he needs a better suit. But just as they're preparing to leave, a call comes in for a crime. They stop talking about the suit and leave, going together for the first time as partners. The final scene of the chapter is Sumio saying he never got him that suit. Kusabi says he'll get him one for him when he's old. They repeat some more reassurances. Keep confident, live positively, and the chapter ends. The New Order song Regret is shown over the moon. Now what the hell has happened? Yeah, well, this is another case that makes no sense until we get to the Placebo plotline, but also like the last Placebo plotline, there isn't much else that happens aside from illuminating this one. So let's get to it. Picking it back up with Tokyo and Erika having solved the riddles, and getting the new strangely dated one with the fairy tale, Erika ends up tying the fairy tale story together. She suddenly remembers the story of Mikamo-77. They get very happy together when she discovers this, and she says that she misses whenever they used to be like this. There is genuinely some chemistry with them when Tokyo isn't being a dick, that is. When she finds the answer, it does that auto-click through thing, and interrupting Tokyo to cut to her excited expression. It's very cute. Erika ends up finding an old man from Mikamo. She and Tokyo both have several visits with him. Interestingly, whenever we talk to him, it actually plays sort of parade circus music. It's very cool. Talking with the old man, it's quite clear he isn't there mentally, and is physically also quite weak. But eventually he tells them that he remembers what went on, even mistakes Tokyo for someone from the village. He says things we already knew about from the previous plotline, about the Yukimura girl, the protests, and so on, but expands upon them. Quite notably, he tells us that the 3 boys who defended the girl were mutilated. One had their eyes gouged out, another his lips sewn, and another his ears pierced. Tokyo also gets an automated email from who he thought was the Bat, but was revealed to be the Bomber. The email address is apparently used by a bunch of hackers to do illegal things. He just strung Tokyo along to have fun. Tokyo connects this person, the Bomber, to being the blinded boy, as he learns that there are ways for blind people to use technology, with voice readers and so on. So the Bomber was a blinded boy. The person who jumped in the smokestack was the one with his mouth sewn shut, and there was the deaf one. I remembered here when playing that, oh shit, Sumio was established very early on in Case 1 as having bad hearing and being able to lip read. Tokyo has another conversation with the man from the village, who mistakes him as one of the boys who defended the girl, telling him that the ringleader was, we have the name cut out again, but we learned that Tokyo did hear it, and it was Sumio. Tokyo goes to meet Sumio at the Harakiri batting center, saying he knows what is going on and wants Sumio to tell him the whole story. The pollution happened, some Yukimuras lived there since they owned the land. Protests happened, the locals called parades. But the 3 boys were friends with the girl, and she was innocent. Due to the intoxicated water, as well as their hatred, the population believed that the girl was evil too, both because she was a part of that family, but they also came to believe that she was maybe even a foul witch, using the idea of a fairy tale to dehumanize her. They went to hunt her down during one of these parades, and she was abandoned as her parents fled. The 3 boys tried to save her, but failed. The crowd gouging the eyes from one, piercing the ears of another, and sewing the mouth shut of another after filling it with oil, mimicking the 3 wise monkeys. Sumio was the one that pierced ears. They began their plans for revenge immediately, to destroy the Yukimura family. Sumio joined the police, got really good tests, learned how to regulate his voice and lip read, as well as use tech and phones and radios to get spoken words through other means, and even bribed to get through a hearing test during the police exam. When they all had their plans ready, they executed it, and it succeeded. They did this with the belief that the soul of the girl would finally be free, but they didn't get to see Sumio's POV from the end of Parade. He'd planned to die in Mikamo too when it blew up. Then Kusabi came along on the helicopter to save him. In the scene where he says that he'll get him a suit is when he's walking Sumio to prison. This chapter is one of my favorites, despite actually kind of hating it my first playthrough, due to how vague it was on the first go-around. But the message, I think, is the strongest of the entire game. The idea that those in power get away with big evil deeds that ruin thousands of innocent lives, but once the small man rebels and the media refuses to cover it, for fear the sentiment will get popular, even if the evil that person did only realistically hurt one person or a small group of people. Their actions are deemed a crime, yet the suffering and social murder caused by the person in power against countless people is allowed, and not called a crime because their evil was done through many layers of using a broken system. Crime is crime unless it is done officially. I think that the chapter was largely inspired by the excellent Akira Kurosawa film High and Low, where a rich businessman living off the backs of others has his son kidnapped for a large ransom, and other people in his company begin fighting over the power vacuum he leaves behind. There are very similar messages and themes, and even a similar sequence of events of an overly complicated method of delivering the ransom money happens. And there's even a place where trash is burned that's very important to the plotline. Also interesting factoid, the lead detective in High and Low is played by legendary actor Tatsuya Nakadai, who also plays the lead in a film called Harakiri, and Harakiri was attempted in this chapter. Coincidence? I think so. The chapter is undoubtedly sloppy though, and honestly is only the beginning of the more sloppy things that begin happening towards the end of the game, namely in how needlessly convoluted some things are. Such as Sumio's plan, and the fact that there's just chance that he was set on with the heinous crimes unit to look after the mansion. I think that'd be more of a central thing, but similarly Yukimura trying to blow himself up and kill the past is never explained. Though I imagine it means that either A, Sumio and the other two were able to convince him he was evil and that this was a way to atone, killing himself in the past, or B, Sumio offered him the detonator as a way for him to get back at the businessman. Though I doubt this one. One more little thing. If you get the deluxe edition of this game, it comes with a little side comic. The comic doesn't really add much, just showing Ryo from Moonlight Syndrome for a little bit, leading up to the events of Case 0. But we do get a little fun moment of Sumio telling the office he has a date. When they ask with who, he says with 2 monkeys. So, that's fun. Chapter 4 begins. Kamui Drum. We have a super cool hacker man aesthetic in this chapter. The terminal green look to everything that even carries over to the Placebo half of the story. We start the chapter with an online chat room argument, and we follow a person with the username Old Man. He types in the chat, "Believe in the net. God is in the cables. Data transcends time." Alright, I've seen Serial Experiments Lane too. Calm down. But to be real, this is a strong-ass opening, and the vibes of the chapter may be the best out of all of them. He continues typing until eventually he just writes, "Believe in the net," until it fills the entire chat room. We then see Old Man in real life, and he's just a normal, nerdy-looking guy in glasses, watching the words that he types repeat over and over. Akira gets an email from Tokyo, saying he uncovered the truth of the previous chapter and spoke to Sumio, that he hopes Kusabi is okay. He also gives Akira a tip, saying that women are disappearing more and more, especially from being on the internet, and that he needs to look into a club called Ronnie Rockets connected to it. Back to Old Man, we see his mom speak to him, and says that she left out some food, but he ignores her. He types in a forum, talking about how parents fail in the modern world, and specifically his mom, because they don't keep their child's hope alive. He also asks the chat if they feel in touch with reality. The people in the chat debate this actually, giving very different but real-feeling internet responses, most of them rather defeatist and pessimistic. Old Man eventually says he's leaving the forum for good. He says that one day they'll meet again. One member, named Neutral, says they wish that he wouldn't leave, and that they needed him here. I find this scene interesting, especially since we are talking about the internet in 1999, but this is far more relevant today. If we're honest with ourselves, people experiencing unreality and disassociation due to being so tied up in the internet is very high. And not only that, there is some truth to the fact that modern society does force many people into these positions. Blaming parents is far too narrow-minded, though, as a society at its core that keeps people constantly working and living day to day. And naturally, kids decide to explore. In times past, this meant running onto the streets or into the woods, but now it's the internet. And parents should help monitor their kids, not to go too deep into the forest and not to go too deep into the internet. And the internet can oftentimes feel grander and more interesting to explore than the real world. The internet can take you anywhere. It has endless knowledge, chat rooms, interests, hobbies, so why wouldn't someone who feels abandoned by the minutiae of the real world retreat into it? But in that retreat, they often get caught in the ugliness and darkness. I think in a weird way, finding a more healthy relationship with the internet is an important part of maturing in the modern world. Old Man says some of what I said here, and says that now is the actual age of exploration, due to all the things you can find. We see him go to a lot of different websites with some really cool designs and animations that really do hit that Y2K internet aesthetic. He judges some of them before eventually coming across a website called Kamui.net. On it is an index of information on Kamui, what is known, what is speculated, and of course, a chat room. He reads some more about Kamui's crimes, and as a result, we learn more. He killed a bunch of corrupt higher class people, mostly involved in disasters, including the former mayor, various politicians, and, I'm not joking, a Church of Scientology representative, though it is spelled P-S-Y-E-N. Classy and subtle, Suda. Nothing is known about his past, but he is multilingual and he committed all the crimes in Winter. Now that I think about it, Ayami's copycat killings also happen in Winter, and the game is slowly advancing towards Winter. Under the quote section, only one appears. Kill the past. The website seems absolutely biased towards idolizing Kamui, and we end with Old Man clearly enchanted by this website, smiling, happy to have found a new anchor point online. Akira gets another email from the Bat, telling Akira not to trust Tokyo again. I know this is sort of weird, being right in the middle of the story, but you and Tokyo Morishima are actually the same person. You share the same DNA, the same body. Just kidding, this isn't a cartoon. But anyways, Tokyo is dangerous. Thinking of killing him. Just look at him. Thinking about him just pisses me off. I'll let you know once I've probably shot him to death, like a dog. Interesting fourth wall breaks, especially since we are both literally at 50% in the story, and also he is right in a way that they're both controlled by the same person. Me, the player. Spooky. Moving to Police HQ, we learn that disappearances are happening 15 times more than usual, which is an absolutely insane number, and that is tied to an increase in internet crime as well. We're given our main objective of the chapter, which is to find a missing girl. Naka tells her story as if it's a fairy tale. A young girl becomes obsessed with a magical device which allows her to travel all over the world and make her dreams come true. Through this device, she makes lots of friends. She trusts them, tells them secrets, and they, like fairies, show her a wondrous new world. But one day, she found darkness in this magic, but she was drawn to it. Part of her wanted to see the horror of this darkness. She found a whole new world and it was thrilling. She began meeting people in this darkness. They lured her out with promises. She slowly began to change. I need you. You're special. I need you. It's the last message she gets before disappearing. Everyone hearing this story refused to take it on, being too freaked out by the internet, leaving us, Akira, to take it. We were given a flyer to go off of, leading us to the same club that Tokyo told us about in his email. We go there and honestly not much happens, though interestingly people are talking about going to Mulholland, the same name as the smoke shop. Someone approaches and denies spreading the flyers, but says that Akira is scaring people by being an obvious fed. But to help Akira and get him to go, he tells him the website listed on the flyer is where he should go. Heading back, Naka signs Akira up to the website and puts Akira's whole damn address in it. Jesus Christ, Naka. Now he says all they have to do is wait. Akira's back home and receives an email telling him to wait for approval for Battle Week. We cut back to this approval process several times throughout the chapter. The message is becoming more and more personal and friendly, and if he joins, he'll be part of the new world. Kusabi is talking to Sumio in prison. They debate the nature of crime and the different severities of it. Kusabi, though, insists that no matter what, crime is crime. They also debate evilness. Kusabi says evil is like math. People find the easiest formula to get it done. I disagree with Kusabi's take here. In some cases, yes, evil is the easy workaround, the quick formula, but greater institutional evil is very much purposefully complex to hide the fact that it is evil. Even if it is known that it is evil, makes the foundation that it is built upon seem insurmountable to break down, or even natural. It's just that its evilness is as natural as the dirt beneath it. Who's going to dig all that up? Regardless, I think, again, this is purposeful. Kusabi's worldview is greatly flawed, and he's very much part of the system. He chooses to continue enforcing it for believing the alternative is worse. Cutting to Old Man, we see that he is chatting on the Kamui-net forum, but the others instantly suss him out as an outsider, and begin threatening him, saying that they can find where he lives easily. He dares them, and they all begin chatting, saying they're finding him and will kill him. Neutral appears in the chat, who was in Old Man's previous forum, but Old Man doesn't seem to notice this. Neutral warns him that they can in fact find him. The others in the chat seem to like Neutral, but tell them to stay out of it. Neutral decides to leave, but warns Old Man if he keeps this up, he's gonna die. Old Man becomes scared. They say that, though he is scared, he is having fun, isn't he? All this thrill from simple text. We leave Old Man as the group says they are coming for him. This mindset is very real. The dark appeal of dark internet forums and getting into fights, even though being on the internet in many cases can be as unsafe as talking to someone face to face. People are thrilled by this, though. We get to the HQ, and there, Naka is streaming something from a dark website. He bought tickets for him and the unit's boss to watch compromised security footage of a famous idol's apartment. They watch it and even chat jokingly together with other people who bought access, talking about her and if she's going on a date and so on. And I know I keep saying this, but it's so much more relevant nowadays. Live streams like this in the 90s, I imagine, were very rare, but it's common every day now to hear about revenge porn or a famous person's nudes being leaked or deep fakes. It's disturbing how normalized it is, and that there is no sympathy. Speaking of, after the idol learned what happens, we see footage of her, and she jumps from a building to her death. We get news that members of her fan club did this, amongst others, and they consider themselves folk heroes for doing it. The members of our team don't even care. Naka saying he even recorded it to resell it and watch it later. Hashisuka says she has no sympathy for her because this type of thing was her job anyway, being an idol. It's stupid that she does this and then people revere her as a legend. What the hell are you talking about? God, these people suck. When Kusabi looks like the moral high point of the group, you know you're messed up. We have another scene with Kusabi and Sumio. Kusabi says Sumio is disappearing into fantasy, and going into contact with the crazy can make you crazy. But Sumio says, all of our actions are real. The past had been alive. The past had to be killed. He also says that Kusabi should know this, and that with what's about to happen, Kusabi is going to be the one to adjudicate. The time for that is almost here. And finally, he reassures Kusabi that he hasn't changed, and is still there. He is still Kusabi's subordinate. Akira gets an email saying he's accepted into the website, that the time for solidarity is almost here, and they ask Akira to wait a little bit longer. Conversations will disappear, people will disappear from the city, and demons will run abound. Then there's a link to Kamui-net. Go back to Old Man. He's gotten an email from Neutral. Old Man has apparently forcefully taken over Kamui-net. They call Old Man insane, and that he's trying to become a dictator, and he's an idiot. They also say that they'll hunt him down. Old Man threatens them to come, and Neutral tells him not to run. Soon as his door gets knocked on, we see him grab a bat and open the door. Standing there is a woman, also a normal, nerdy-looking person. Surprisingly, though, instead of fighting Neutral, they both say that they were fated to meet. They sleep together. And she says that he is special and that together, they both could bring something greater than Kamui and create a new world. They can be a moon to watch the world together, shining quietly in darkness that nobody will notice, watching over people's sins. We see a live stream of the Old Man and Neutral. Their appearance has greatly changed with a sort of dark punk aesthetic, similar to how you've seen Kamui before. They now call themselves, as a group, Method Tank. They say a new age will start on 9/9/99, though they're some years off, as a new age started on 11/11/11. But anyways, they also say that they're both gods, sent to purify the world and send love. They end the stream saying, "Kill the past," as it turns into an art video, very reminiscent of the kind Kamui and Ayame were making, and it links to a new website. Akira gets a final email apologizing for the wait, and gives him a passport. It tells him to head immediately to the Kinjo building, and a little note at the bottom from Chairman Kinjo tells him to please take care of the tardy girl. I hadn't realized this my first playthrough, but we got an email from Kinjo as early as Chapter 2, telling us to send his regards to the girl, and that she'll be late. Weird-ass time shenanigans, I guess. Kusabi tells Sumio about Method Tank, saying we got some clowns, a pair of jerk-offs, avant-gardes, he calls them. But Sumio corrects him, avant-garde. I love these two so much. I've taken an entire game with just them as the main characters. Sumio calls them Kamui copycats, and that they're actually both hateful and loving of Kamui. Kusabi says that everyone always thinks they're going to change the world, instead of trying to start with small stuff first, and asks what's up with the end of the millennium. Sumio flatly states that this isn't the end of the millennium. The end of the millennium is actually next year. Regardless, Kusabi says that they're taking advantage of the end of the millennium to sell their message, piggybacking its hype. Akira comes to the Kinjo building. We get to explore all of its floors for really no reason at all, but it's fun to see all the business signs here. He finally enters her room and meets the missing girl. Her appearance greatly changed. She says that she knows he was looking for her. She also seems to know Naka, says that he cried wah wah like a little kid at the idol's death, the same one that he perved on. She says, though, not to tell him that we know, and we get a little heart icon appear in her dialogue. I don't know exactly, but I think the implication is that Naka is the one who lured her offline. It's established earlier in the game that Naka likes younger women. She says that she knows Naka, and even that he sent Akira on this mission. What a creep. She says that this place used to be lively, but everyone there has already moved on, and she came late, and then they left her behind. She says they went to a different dimension, one where numbers that can't be divided here can be divided, and that she is going to that world too. Maybe they'll be considered invaders, but it'll work out. She thanks Akira for giving her one last conversation, because she wanted one before moving on. She says the group forgave her for being late, and that they're pretty nice for aliens. She says it was fun and goodbye, and then a bright light consumes her. What? Did she just transcend to another dimension? Like, that's clearly what she just did, right? What the hell is this game? I don't even know anymore. I have a theory that the talking doll we see at the start of the game is actually this girl. I don't know what else it could be referring to. Maybe Hashisuka, since she mentions being nothing but a doll. I don't know. Just want to throw that out there. We get a final scene back at HQ, and everyone learns about Method Tank. And due to orders, no police are doing anything for some reason. And there's a countdown on their website, saying that the arteries of the world change from here. From terminal to terminal, everyone's love will proliferate. When you open the true eyes of your soul, the new world will be before you. Words and intentions are wiped away by the passage of time. People are reborn the internet, cover the whole of the land with a great digital wave. People at HQ humorously debate if a nuke might go off when the timer goes all the way down, and then suddenly, the entire city's power shuts off. We see Kusabi at the batting center, meeting Munakata once more. He gets told that Method Tank installed advanced operating systems across the entire world in an attempt to psychically connect all humans, but there had to be a punishment for this, so their attempt failed, instead caused a worldwide blackout, a kind of real Y2K event for this universe's timeline. Munakata says that Kamui is going to come back. Given that his toothaches were right last time, Kusabi takes it straight. He also asks Kusabi to not get in Kamui's way, and warns Kusabi that the people around him are not to be trusted. Kusabi returns to his car and sees Sumio, who tells Kusabi what comes next depends on him. Sumio disappears, and I can't tell if this is literally, like, the missing girl, or is like a vision Kusabi had in his mind. Who knows? This game could have a biblically accurate angel appear, and I just accept it. He asks Sumio what he should do. We see Kamui's face flash over and over again. For Tokyo's half of the chapter, he's plagued by nightmares and is tasked with his employer to look into Kamui.net. He ends up finding out how to get into it due to a model he apparently met having access. He talks to people in the chat, and when they threaten him, he puts his whole ass address in the chat to taunt them back. He has more nightmares about being surrounded by children being let onto a bus, but he wasn't allowed onto the bus due to not having enough live weight, like in reference to the weight an animal has to be before being slaughtered. Gets an email from his adopted mother asking how he's doing, and we learn he has no memories from before he was 7. Gets another email from the Bat warning him to stay away from Kamui and the Heinous Crimes Unit. Tokyo tells Slash look into the Bat for real this time, and also gets Erica to help. We had a long sequence where Tokyo just relearns the information of the main case, but eventually Slash says that they believe they have found the Bat. Days later, though, the Bat tells Tokyo that he learned about Slash and has dealt with her, and he gives Tokyo other personal details, and warns him that he will kill Tokyo next. Tokyo freaks out and does learn that someone matching Slash's description in the tech world was murdered. Tokyo tries to get Erica to stop looking into the Bat, fearing for her too, but she insists she wants to help him, that they're in too deep to give up. Tokyo begins taunting the Bat across the internet and telling other hackers to look into him, since he killed Slash. Tokyo gets a call from Inzawa, the businessman back in Chapter 1 who knew about Kamui and Ayame. He wants to meet in a switchyard to discuss more info on the Kamui case. Tokyo speaks to Inzawa and learns rather quickly that Inzawa is actually the Bat. Not only that, he was also his employer, lying about being his former boss. Inzawa is a free agent between the political factions, and they have hired him, for whatever reason, to supervise Tokyo. But Tokyo has become too dangerous to be kept around, and it's related somehow to the return of Kamui. He pulls a gun on Tokyo and goes to shoot him before his own head explodes. Tokyo tells Erica the Bat is dead, and was killed by someone else, someone he didn't see. And he begs Erica to stop looking into Kamui. He also confesses that he believed the Kamui client was their old boss, now revealed to also be Erica's husband, but Inzawa was lying. He says that he brought Erica in just to use her as a shield because of who he thought his boss was, and that's all that she was, and that he used her, so she should stop helping him. Erica says that she doesn't care and wants him to keep using her as a shield, and that she'll face this together with him. Tokyo, though, says that he's going to run away because people are after him. But Erica shows up at his apartment to try and stop him. She asks if he's really going to run, and he says yes. He asks her to take care of Red and to look after him. Suddenly, Method Tank's experiment happens, and the entire city goes black. Tokyo tells Red to not be afraid, and an unknown voice tells Tokyo it's time to go, and he leaves. Alright, yep, as is the case with Tokyo, some things answered, mostly just recapped, and a whole bunch of nonsensical new things to titillate us. The final main chapter starts, named Life Cut. Tokyo gives us an update of what has happened since the Method Tank incident. Even though a worldwide blackout was something important, people have already moved on with their lives. Kamui had a sudden recovery during the blackout, escaped his facility, and killed 7 important government officials. He is still on the run. Tokyo wonders if this is retribution for what he calls the Method Tank Rebellion, a message that Kamui is still the face of this revolutionary attitude in the city and not Method Tank. A live-action documentary plays, and this is one of the segments of the game that I was most impressed by. It is really well done. It feels like a genuine in-universe documentary, or even like a new segment in a mockumentary horror film like Noroi the Curse. The documentary is about Kamui, and how his past has supposedly been found, and that he was raised in a small, snowy town, though this is proven to be a lie. The documentary also asks what the public's feelings are on him. Some see him as a good guy vigilante, others as a crazy violent person, and others still as essentially the energy of the end of the millennium made flesh. At the batting center, Munakata tells Kusabi that there is a group of killers known as Trump that are loyal to Kamui. In addition, there are others still across the whole city who are inspired by him. Munakata wonders if they are somehow connected to the government. Kusabi says people romanticize this stuff too much, and how it's bullshit that Kamui has become something mythical. But Kusabi says he isn't. He's just a person. Munakata tells him just think about it, and figure it out himself. Kusabi leaves, and a man with a gun approaches Munakata, telling him they said too much to Kusabi. We hear a gunshot before the scene transitions. Back in the HQ, we learn that the boss of the Heinous Crimes Unit has been promoted to Deputy Commissioner, and Naka has been made the new Chief Director. Central has started a new and intense crime eradication campaign, and Heinous Crimes are to assist. Naka also makes it official that Sumio is gone, and brings in 2 new people to the unit, a man named Kenta Mikoshiba, and a woman named Sakura Natsumi. Sakura is actually the daughter of the same Natsumi from the early chapters of the unit that Akira was a part of. Naka also informs the team that Kamui has been found and cornered in a certain building, and we're all to go there to assist. We cut to the roof where we see Kusabi and the former chief director speaking. The director seems unusually depressed. He apologizes to Kusabi and tells him to look after Sakura, and that it'll get tough for Akira. He also warns Kusabi that they are after Morikawa, as well as anyone who has had contact with Kamui. He says it is one of those things that can't be helped. Kusabi pauses and asks him what he said, but the boss repeats it, saying it can't be helped, and he's leaving everything in Kusabi's hands. Kusabi says he understands and shoots the director dead, making good on the promise that he told Sumio about chapters earlier. If that was ever said, it meant that he wanted to be killed. Kusabi reassures the dead director to rest, and he'll take care of things from here. We return to Akira and his new partner exploring the building that Kamui is supposed to be in. We're told the mission: we can't kill Kamui. We have to lure him to the roof where he will be killed by sharpshooters. The reason this is so important is so it can be televised. Several media crew are there to film the whole thing, to teach the public a lesson for idolizing Kamui, and that this is to make a spectacle of it, showing that Kamui, as they are, is nothing special, and this is what happens to those who resist. Akira runs into Kusabi in the building, who tells Akira he's going to disappear, and warns him to be careful and watch his back, and to also teach Sakura well. He also warns Sakura to be suspicious of the truth, because truth and facts are different. Soon after, Akira comes across other members of the team. Morikawa tells him that Kusabi killed the director, and now he has been tasked with the disposal of Kusabi by the dead boss too. This confuses me of why he would task Morikawa with this, since his ending with Kusabi seemed to pass the torch on to him. Hachisuka also soon appears, and Sakura and her have a brief conversation about why Kamui has to be killed this way, and Hachisuka says that so the mind virus of Kamui will be wiped away from the public. She also asks Sakura if she knew what her father's actual profession was, since this is in line with what they do. She also outright threatens both Akira and Sakura, telling Akira to stay out of everything and that she'll eliminate Sakura if she keeps on questioning things. The other new member of the Heinous Crimes is also looking for Kusabi, tasked with Naka to dispose of him. He says that Kamui didn't actually kill anyone, but he doesn't understand what that means. He seems excited to hunt down and kill Kusabi, thinking that it was lucky that he got that task. Then finally Akira comes across Tokyo, who says he found out all the secrets, and to read his email. But Sakura insists Tokyo has to leave since he's a civilian, and he does. Akira is able to get Kamui to go up the stairs, and get animation of Kamui getting to the top. Dozens of sniper rifles are aimed at him, and helicopters with filming crews fly overhead, and he's excessively shot dead, as his arms are raised to the sky almost in prayer. Tokyo keeps narrating, saying that Kamui's body was turned into Swiss cheese and quickly cleaned up. The media, after his death is televised, stopped reporting on him, and no big changes were made in society. As Kamui was executed, so too were the words of the people. The few who saw hope in Kamui also lost a part of themselves. Even Tokyo admits that he too had seen something in Kamui, which is shocking, since his whole arc started off with him shunning the idea of Kamui. I think the idea here is that he believed through the public's interest in Kamui some change could finally happen, but instead the horrible corrupt status quo continues. He also says that Kusabi, Morikawa, and Hachisuka were never again seen after the execution, but in the midst of it all, Akira continued to work. Akira reads Tokyo's email. It tells him some plot details, the ones I'm going to wait to go over until they get explained more later. Most importantly, he tells him to meet Takeshi Kinjo, someone who's now emailed us several times, but who we've never met. He is essentially an illegal private investigator. We return to the Kinjo building and meet him. It's interesting to me that he looks like a Kamui supporter or copycat. We've seen this type of visual design only for Kamui, the hacker duo, and a little bit in The Missing Girl, who admittedly he was involved with. He asks if Akira remembers him, but says that he couldn't, since they've never met. Kinjo gives us another lore dump, essentially recapping the three factions of the city, and that 20 years ago, Silver Case was called that because all the victims were silver with old age. He also says that Kamui did these murders on behalf of the factions. Kamui wasn't a vigilante, he was just a tool, a paid hitman, another battle in the grand scheme of a political war. He also says that Kamui was made by the factions through the Shelter Kids Act, mentioned back in the first chapter. The Shelter Kids were supposed to be little perfect soldiers for the factions, to use to get what they needed done. The one who's executed was just really a dummy, to vanquish the public's interest in him, and there are many Kamui replacements prepared. Kamui will come back. His name will just be different. He tells Akira that the rest is up to him, and their meeting is over. Kusabi meets with Munakata at the batting center again. Seems the gunshot we heard was Munakata getting the drop on the goon who's trying to kill him. Kusabi seems surprised that he's alive and wonders if Munakata wants him to be killed, but he outright says that he doesn't, and that they're still friends. Munakata tells him the factions are openly warring again for control of the wards. Kusabi says in the chaos he'll do what he pleases and go after these evil little shits then. Back at HQ, Naka tells us the mission was a success. He also emotionlessly tells the two new members their new mission is solely to eliminate Kusabi and Morikawa for abandoning the mission, and that Hachisuka is already committed to it. The sudden shift of working partners to just emotionlessly having everyone order to kill each other is a very effective hype for this final main chapter, because everything feels super high stakes and also sad. Everyone in the Heinous Crimes unit were pretty messed up. I still ultimately enjoyed their banter. Naka also tells him about Trump, and tells Sakura to keep an eye on Akira, a not-so-subtle threat. Kenjo emails Akira again, saying he had a lack of hospitality in their last meeting, and gives him a tip to look into the smoke shop at Mulholland, and go to a vending machine with placebo written on it, and the future is sure to bloom. Akira does, and he finds that the vending machine functions like a hidden door. I wonder if the people back in the club in the last chapter talking about Mulholland knew about this secret door. We go through some very long, funky hallways and meet Tokyo. Tokyo warns him not to go deeper, and that ahead there's a trap. There's a place where common sense will be of no use. Also says that Morikawa gave him a notebook. He may show it to Akira later. He tells Akira not to die out there, and he continues on. We have a very jarring set of gameplay coming up. We go through a long hallway, down an escalator, and through a long hallway again, super slowly, over and over, as scenes in the previous cases play like a greatest hits clip show. This goes on for an ungodly amount of time, and the hallways all look identical. It's cool visually, but it overstays its welcome. Akira finds at the bottom of all these paths is a railway, where Morikawa is waiting. He tells Akira that the war is on, and wants to give Akira his last will and testament. We have to find Kamui and not get distracted by the chaos. We have to use our mind's eye to search for the truth. If we come to know the silver case, to read his notebook. A train arrives and Kusabi shoots Morikawa dead. I'm still so confused as to why Morikawa was told to go after Kusabi. It doesn't make sense. Akira boards the train after a long ride with a fairly cool animation, returned towards the shining tower in the distance. The train docks there. Dock? Is that the word? Akira goes into a waiting lounge, and there's Hachisuka, dressed up and looking quite different. She says that she kills humans who get in her way, but killing humans who don't stay dead is no fun. She says that she is here to kill Kusabi, and she really did love Morikawa. Suddenly, Sakura, who apparently had been following Akira, shoots Hachisuka dead. Nothing like Deus Ex Sakura. Okay. Sakura is pretty damn important, but she was introduced only in this chapter. Yes, she was mentioned once in Chapter 0 in one line, but she's only been present for this one chapter. It's really annoying, to be honest. I don't understand why she couldn't have been written in to at least be present during the previous chapter to build up her character and importance. As it is, she just feels tacked on, like a lot of this ending does. Back at the batting center, Munakata meets with Naka. Naka reveals himself to be part of an opposing faction, but Munakata apparently already knew this, and even that Naka had a nickname, the Mad Nobleman of the Frontier faction. Regardless, Naka threatens to kill Munakata unless he gives him a reason not to. Munakata tells him who Kusabi and the others are, and Naka says he's going to shoot him anyway, clarifying this will be the 21st person he's killed. Naka says that this is being done because Munakata was involved in something called the Ayame Mass Pro. An enemy of women is my enemy, he says. Ironic since Naka is shown to be a weirdo, but he clarifies, he's actually a secretary of the International Feminist Confederation. Before Naka can kill him, though, Munakata does what he does best, and shoots first, killing him. The other new member of the Heinous Crimes unit, Mikoshiba, appears, who appears to have been a plant working for Munakata. He asks for permission to go and kill Kusabi, but Munakata shoots him dead too. He values Kusabi over this, and he mutters to himself this is now all up to Kusabi. Listen, I get the idea of this sort of like a Reservoir Dogs ending sequence, but it's so sudden and forced. Like, we just met this guy, and it's supposed to be like a reveal that he's a plant and all that, and he dies immediately. It doesn't hit, basically. Anyways. Sakura and Akira explore the tunnels leading up to the tower, and she talks to Akira about the shelter kids. How they were a livestock for the next generation. Kind of like Tokyo's dream of him and other kids being compared to livestock's live weight. She also says that the government selected kids who had the potential to become criminals, and that most of them later became special forces, their memories of being a shelter kid erased. She says that Akira is a shelter kid like Kamui, and in fact, all the shelter kids are essentially manufactured Kamuis. She says there's also a female version of this called Ayame, and that the Ayame we encountered is just one of many. That Sakura, as well as Hachisuka, are both Ayames too. What we saw back there was Hachisuka fully taking on the role of Ayame. Hachisuka was used as a sacrificial pawn of her father, the mayor. There were thousands of Kamuis and Ayames. Getting to the plaza before the tower, we find that this is the main shelter where the shelter kids were housed. The boys were raised first for 4 years, then the females for 4 more years after. Her father apparently told her about this and said that he wanted to be killed by an Ayame for some reason. Maybe guilt over being involved with it. I don't know. Atop the tower is a TV station. Sakura tells Akira to go on alone and calls him Kamui. The next section is really annoying, as we have to explore 10 different towers, all of which are identical, and very long, with the exact same interiors. Within them we find some notes talking about how the kids were raised and their eyes were tested for something involving silver eyes. We see their living quarters, sanitary, uncomfortable looking, and not very humane. First of all, we learn that after doing certain tasks and getting good grades, they were judged on a sticker-based meritocracy. Oh, the humanity. We also find the dead bodies of the Trump members. Lastly, we run to Kusabi, and it was he who killed them. They were acting as a defense while the next Kamui emerged. It talks about how it's messed up the kids used to live in a place like this, but it's not too different compared to Ward 24. He says the Trump people were also Kamui stock. He says the Kamui dying means nothing because Kamui would just take their place, no buffer between them, and that the next Kamui would come here, like clockwork. And he wanted to meet the next Kamui face to face and have him show himself before him. He then says to us, "Glad you could make it, Kamui," confirming that Akira would be the next activated Kamui. They continue deeper into complex. Kusabi saying that this place was made originally just for fun by the elder members of the factions designing of political power, full of tainted money. The original Kamui, known as the Format Kamui, snuck into the tower here and killed all the silver members of the different factions, hired by the outlying third conservative faction. Also says that when he killed Kamui, Kamui didn't resist, he just smiled. That was a silver case. The original Kamui was real, but he has been dead. He even debates if Kamui was a human, since there were no birth records of him. We continue up the tower's elevator and see a beautiful shot of the city as we continue to rise above it. We're told that the TV tower shut down and is now run completely by computers. He says that there was one path in the tower at the top that he could never open. Solving a quick puzzle involving activating different tombstones, the murdered politicians, opens the path. When we ascend, Kusabi tells us, "Don't get tense, Kamui. Just relax." Inside the secret top floor is a giant brain, with the wiring connecting it to a bunch of computers. A dead woman is seen sitting outside of it, and this is apparently supposed to be the idol who died in the last chapter. In the center of the computers is a chubby nerd, smiling and spinning around his chair all goofily. Anime playing on some screens, data and programs on others. Kusabi says we finally made it together, Kamui. Nah, instead of Kamui, he'll keep calling us Big Dick. He says that no matter if Akira becomes or doesn't become Kamui, it's up to him what he does here. We walk forward. Guy in the middle just still spinning around. Kusabi asks what we'll do. Will you live by killing your past? Or you die clinging to it? Can you keep moving forward? Can you live after facing your true self? Decide, here and now, Big Dick. You were born with a set of balls, so keep living like it means something. Pull the trigger on the devil's gun. Destroy the darkness. Seize the light. Akira pulls the trigger. We see live action footage of a forest, and then outside, Kusabi says it's finished. He just wants to go home. Munakata and Kusabi meet at their usual spot. He asks Kusabi what happened to Akira, but Kusabi says he doesn't know if there's someone by that name, and that Kamui is alive. There's some rumors that Akira is the Format Kamui, but Kusabi dismisses it. But he contemplates if Kamui is the total sum of everyone else's existence, since so many were sacrificed for him. Munakata tells him there's something as knowing too much, and that he's a nice guy. Kusabi says, "Yeah, I understand. They're satisfied. Isn't that right, Akira?" We cut forward. Kusabi walking outside covered in blood. It is vague, but I think it's implied that he and Munakata fought. Kusabi says that someone can't fully get rid of a shadow or erase their past completely, but everyone is equal, and as such, has the same terms to life, and can evolve and change who they want to be. It doesn't matter if your name is Kusabi, Kira, or Kamui. It's a spirit that resides in us all, and within that spirit is the light of possibility. Kill the shadow, give birth to the light. Find that light within your spirit. Seize that light, Akira. Thus ends the main path of Transmitter. In that, okay, we'll get to it. Before we do, though, there are a handful of small extra chapters, mostly used to close up plot threads and set future games up. Also need to touch on Tokyo's final chapter too, but let's close out Akira first. In chapter Danma, or Discourse, Akira meets up with Kusabi in a coffee shop. It's a fairly cute set of scenes, but also needlessly convolutes the plot further. as we get another truthful confession of what the silver case was. Despite getting like 5 of those so far, and one from him in the last chapter in the elevator, which is just immediately made a lie. So I wonder why Kusabi even told Akira it if he's going to tell the truth now. What happened is that the old faction members all murdered Kamui. Yep, the opposite. Gouging out Kamui's eyes and fighting to death over his eyes. The reason for this is that Kamui has something called a silver eye, which rendered him ageless. All the old men kill each other, only one remaining, who plucked out his own eye, put the silver one in, making him turn instantly young. He laughed as Kusabi watched, Kusabi laughed too, then shot him twice, killing him. Now, though, the silver eye is owned by the current mayor, and he's actually not who he said he was. He's actually the grandfather of Hachisuka, and not her real father, because he killed his own son to take his identity. He also says that Tokyo is siblings with Hachisuka. Kusabi calls the mayor evil for using them for his schemes, and the new age is coming soon. Then, Kusabi asks him for an important favor. Akira, lend me 50,000 yen. A cute end to a confusing scene for a confusing game, and needlessly convoluting the game even further. It's kind of a whimper. It feels like they thought of the silver eye last second, and retconned it so they can use it in future games. I don't know. We get a mid-credit scene at Heinous Crimes HQ. Kusaka, the Harakiri guy, and Sakura, as well as Kusabi, are there. They say that Kamui has returned. Kusabi says that he can't because Kamui is right here, referencing Akira. But then they say the mayor has been murdered. Kusabi says, then, who is Kamui? What a long-ass journey. And then he tells Akira that they'll meet again, but asks him, who is Akira? Continuing on now, let's backtrack to see what Tokyo is up to. Tokyo disappeared for a while in the midst of it, except that he essentially has the memories of dead people inside of him. They even possess him occasionally to type up their memories in his digital diary. It's at the point where he's basically moment to moment constantly having to deal with the intrusive thoughts of the dead. Some taunting, some asking for help, others monologuing and telling him things. The voice at the end of the last Tokyo chapter telling Tokyo it's time to go was one of these voices. One voice continues trying to get Tokyo to kill Akira, but he refuses. We get some really effective horror sequences where we can read the experiences of the dead and how they felt dying. Some feeling ecstasy, others the feeling of their head breaking, others the nothingness, and so on. It's really well done horror. Tokyo also learns that he was a failed Kamui. Something about him resisted it, like a glitch, so he left the program and got adopted after his memories were erased. Tokyo goes to the bar and talks to the bartender about feeling tainted and imperfect. But the bartender tells him that imperfect can be considered perfect by virtue of their imperfection. The bartender himself confesses that he is gay, that he hated himself for this, but eventually, through killing the idea of this being an imperfection, he accepted that it's a part of who he is, and he learned to love himself, and it purified his heart. I think this scene is neat, given that it is 1999 and fairly conservative Japan, and expands upon the barman some, and also on the themes of killing the past. Tokyo also gets emails from Erika from the weeks he was gone. She confesses to loving him, and that she will always love him. She also has been taking care of Red and sends updates on him all the time. And eventually Tokyo does talk to her, saying that sometime before Red's natural lifespan ends, he'll come back and get him and see her. For now he has to run. Erika says that she'll be waiting for him, and she trusts him. Through speaking to the bat, Enzawa's spirit, he learns that Enzawa was killed by someone named Nezu. Nezu is the nerd that we see in control of the city. Nezu was brought on by the mayor because he found out that Nezu was this sort of brilliant mastermind. So he has him actually control the city. And Nezu views controlling the city as basically playing a game of Sim City, and that he wanted Kamui to come back because it's like the equivalent of like a Godzilla disaster event in a video game. Check up and test his simulated but real city. Tokyo is slowly losing his mind with all the voices, and losing his sense of self. But ultimately he decides to continue on. He writes an email to himself saying that he'll move forward, simply let everything be. Because even someone worthless has at least part of a soul. That is how people live. That's what I finally learned for living everyday life in this world. Even without hope, even in great fear, even when continuing to drag along that which no longer has any value, one can go on living. Specifically because of our imperfections, life has meaning. Don't you think so? Don't you? He sends the email to himself, and it's meant to function as a way for him to remember himself in case he ever does fully forget and go insane. And he wipes all of his writings on his computer, saying that that computer was in a way him, and that doing this is killing the past, and all of his memories that lived inside the machine. Tokyo wakes up at the bar, after heavily drinking, the bartender leaving behind a note that tells him that when he's up, he should lock the bar, and in life, it's okay to stick your tail between your legs and run away once or twice. Tokyo locks up the bar and leaves, ascending some stairs as various consciousnesses speak in his mind. one telling him it is pointless, there is no escape, and he'll die insane. We see the art of the stairs show a light at the top, and we end with Tokyo saying, lingering consciousness bullshit. Will I ever be able to accept them? They finally just disappear one day? Will I be unable to take it any longer and simply go insane? He sees a flash of the consciousness and curses them defiantly. His main story ends. We never get to see Tokyo's point of view from being inside the building when Kamui was killed, nor in the Mulholland tunnels, nor even meeting Kinjo. These are all just left vague, and it really bothers me. I still don't know how we got to those points, and it's just frustrating. For Tokyo's proper epilogue scene, though, we see him on a plane to Lost Pass Island, the location in the first sequel to The Silver Case, called Flower, Sun, and Rain. The chapter begins with the words, "Hey, you. Yeah, you." I don't know if it's intentional, but these are lyrics in the 9 Inch Nails song Piggy, a song I've been listening to a lot recently, so it was surprising to me to see it. Tokyo is in a nightmare. He's back in the tower he was raised in. He sees a kid scream, turn into a zombie-like figure, and then into adult Tokyo. Tokyo looks different. Short, dark hair, sunglasses, and a leather jacket. He's woken up by a flight attendant saying that his alarm is going off. He checks his PC where a ton of messages are there. One that says the bat is always watching, another from Slash saying that they survived as a computer program, and another email from unknown sender wondering what it'd be like if people never died. But then it says his mind is basically already like that. The laptop gets emails increasingly fast, presumably from all the consciousnesses inside of him. It's a really good horror scene. Suddenly he wakes up on the plane again. A young girl named Catherine saying he was having a nightmare and crying. She says in his sleep he talked about having a curse, and keeps asking about his eye. He says that it will curse her if she keeps looking at it. She asks if he stole the eye, and that she learned he did by reading his mind. He then catches on and asks if she's real, or a construction of his mind. He does say that he stole the eye, and got it by scraping it out with a spoon, and got the curse of immortality through the eye, meaning that Tokyo was the one who killed the mayor, or probably did. Certainly he has the eye now and is immortal, but he says the eye chose him as a new host, and that the past can't be thrown out so easily, because it loops around again and again. The girl says the past is something to be killed, though, right? The girl tells him that the curse will soon be replaced by a blessing, if he just goes back to sleep a little longer. And then she disappears. We get one more Akira epilogue scene too, but frankly we need to bring this video to an end. It's very short and ties directly into the Silver Case's sequel, The 25th Ward, so if I cover that game, I'll go over it then. Just know that Akira is apparently on the run, Kusabi's friend Munakata survived and is wheelchair bound from their fight, and that's it. Phew, okay. Alright, so, I love this game. I wouldn't have made this long of a video on it if I didn't, but wowee, this whole thing is a complete nightmare. Things that the player could have never known suddenly appear and matter a whole lot, like there's some big reveal. The whole segment with Nezu in the tower, being behind everything, feels like if the secret dog ending in Silent Hill was canonized as the true ending. And then there are just outright abandoned details that don't matter. We get like 6 different versions of the same event, and they all come one after the other. It'd be different if like we got one in chapter 1, then one in chapter 3, another in chapter 5, but they're all at the end one after the other. So whenever one is revealed to be a lie, it's just sort of like, okay, like I didn't have enough time to marinate that and like accept it, so it doesn't matter. It's not to say it's all bad. I think the actual conclusion of the tower is good, up until the nerd in a chair reveal. It's all very high stakes. Despite this poor ending, I think the game is still great. There are these amazing themes and messaging that still hold true. Politically and socially, there's the message of how the poor are kept in line, through both poor access to flawed information, as well as just open inequality, and what the idea of crime is. Crime is said a lot, but we clearly see it does not apply to certain people. The forces themselves call themselves criminal-minded. What they do is abhorrent. The difference is that they're given a badge and told that what they do, they're allowed to. The upper class commit what for the poor person to be a criminal offense daily, but due to their status, it isn't. And as the player, and even some of the characters, we see things that on paper should be ruled as crime is crime, but they dismiss. Like the young boy avenging his murdered friend. Is that truly equal in crime and evilness to the adult man who killed a child just from hate of the child having a good time? Quite notably, the access to information is a huge plot point in basically every chapter. The Heinous Crimes unit, as well as Republic and other units, function basically only to make sure the public doesn't learn about things. And these things are almost always messaging of resistance. Only people who know the actual truth are those in power. So how's a poor person supposed to know the truth? How are they supposed to know what in politics is real? Especially when the sources of information are tainted, with tiers upon tiers of lies as well as exclusions. Not only that, but that many people are willing to accept the idea that it is best if they don't know some things. It's a population not only poor financially, but poor intellectually too. And a society that is poor in that can't change anything. The other important theme is the idea that we have to kill the past. An idea that people often dwell in their past and let it shackle them, defining who they have to be because of it. We're oftentimes forced by an unresolved past to be a certain way. That way is often limited and worse off for it. It doesn't have to be the case. We have an expectation of who we have to be, but that's all it is. An expectation, and a false one. To move on in our lives, emotionally, spiritually, personality-wise, and otherwise, we have to confront the things in our past and about ourselves, our families, our experiences, that keep us unable to progress as people. While the past absolutely does loop back around and inform us daily, to kill the past is to acknowledge it existed and to resolve it, confront it, and to come to peace with it, leave it at that acknowledgement, and where it should be, in the past. We see this in plenty of characters. Notably, of course, Akira and Tokyo, with their raisings as tomboys. We see it in Sumio and his past with Yukimura, and how he just couldn't move on until he killed his past. Kusabi with the silver case, and even the bartender, with the cultural expectations of his sexuality, and him repressing it due to that expectation, although eventually coming to love himself once he shed that expectation. Everyone here had to kill the past, some by denying it, and others through more visceral actions, and some failed. To kill the past isn't the fix-all, but it is a start. So that's the Silver Case, a game that has some of the best character writing out there, an amazing style that has so many little eclectic details, with minor animations, artwork, stylistic flares, and a genuine, unique vision. The story does fall apart a little bit on itself, the unneeded, nonsensical inclusion, retconning, and bad pacing that grinds the story to a halt, time and time again. I still think, though, it's worth playing, due to how it builds on the visual novel style in a unique way, its aesthetics, and its character writing, but expect some nonsense. Thank you all for watching. This was a long video, huh? Just wanted to say thanks to Dungeon Chill for allowing me to use his Twilight Syndrome and Moonlight Syndrome gameplay in the preamble about Suda51. This is my first ever Suda51 game, and I loved it. I learned while looking into him as well that he helmed the Samurai Champloo game. Samurai Champloo is one of my favorite anime ever, so I'm going to have to look into it. I also want to say thanks to everyone who tuned in on the newest video. It's my biggest view and subscriber increase yet, and it means a lot. This video, though, is by far my biggest project, but it'll not be my only one. My ultimate goal in making this channel was to make a long Morrowind retrospective series, and has always being worked on in the background. I want to cover the full game itself, as well as fan-made content like mods, as well as show talented fan artists. I can't promise a date on that, but know that it, as well as some other big projects, are in the channel's future, like Enderall and Dragon Age Origins. For the future in the short term, though, I plan to do a few more short videos, or at the very least shorter than this one, probably in the 30 to 50 minute long range. I hope that my voice and delivery has been good. I try to talk a bit more clearly, although I know I'm a fast speaker, so I hope that despite that, this was still legible. I'm still working on my video voice, I guess, and how to deliver things. Anyways, if you want to support me, I do have a Patreon for monthly donations. I post script previews, video previews, and do other small things, like some essays on music, games, and even some curated music playlists. I plan to start doing bigger extra content too, like audiobooks and bonus videos if I get people signed up. If you sign up for my Patreon, I will be saying and showing your name at the end of my videos. If I start getting patrons and other supporters, I plan to do that for as long as it is feasible. I doubt I'll ever get enough to be unable to say them all at the end of the video, so if you enjoyed this and want to support me, that'd be awesome. Otherwise though, I'm already very happy with you watching to the end, so do comment if you want to. Comments are my favorite thing. I love reading them, I love responding to them. Tell me your thoughts on the game, the video, or anything else that you want to say. This has been your Resident Eccentric, and I will see you again. Farewell.
A little bird told me that you've been asking around town about a resident eccentric. I'd like to know why.